We are live. It is Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor, the man, the myth, the legend, I want to call myself right now. Look, we have a radio show, Kevin Wilson and I. We actually just expanded into a new market. We're all over New York State in the Southern Tier now, out in Rochester, WYSL, WLC, WCKR, and WLEA. A lot of you guys have already been paying attention. My friend Thomas Daniel Queeters joining me tonight. Who are you, Tom? What do you do?
Wow. I'm a guy who lived a problem and found a solution, and now I'm trying to cookie cutter that solution out to others who need it. For those who can see, I'm in a wheelchair.
Yes.
Right? Pretty obvious when you meet me in person. And there's a couple of statistics I'll start with. 50% of all wheelchairs in this country break down in a 6-month period. That means you're close to 100% a year.
Yeah.
The average wait time for repair is actually 5 months.
Yeah.
So you break down in 6 months and you wait 5 months. You break down in 6 months and you wait 5 months, right? How are we supposed to parent our children or find a job?
Wow. So listen. I think that I think that this is going to be, we're going to accumulate viewers as this show goes on. All right. So yeah. I think that we're going to revisit this in a few minutes. What I want to know, like you and I have some shared history. We shared some fun things. You and I were very active in the LPNY in New York State at a time when it looked fantastic. Like we had an opportunity. Sharp guys, aggressive guys, and people looking to have fun like you and I were out there getting ready to meet people. Now, COVID came around, kind of put a freaking damper on it, but I want people to know about our 2020 campaign and when we were going after, you were running for New York State Senate, I was running for New York State Senate. I want people to know about that you before we get into what I'm arguably going to call the new improved you, okay? Like politics doesn't solve a lot of problems. As libertarians, we're fighting a vast sea of corruption, a tyrannical government, a two-party for-profit system that does not want our input. So let's talk about our petitioning and some of the events you had. Let's talk about that for a few minutes, if you don't mind.
So the problem that I was starting with was lack of coverage for an adequate wheelchair. I had coverage for inadequate wheelchairs that would harm me if I used them.
Correct.
It was libertarians who crowdfunded that solution.
I remember. Yeah.
Right. We raised the money, shipped it, and modified it for my needs in 2 months when I'm used to it taking 2 years.
Yeah, brother. Guys, I have seen Thomas Daniel Queeters' wheelchair. I think it weighs 800, 900 pounds. Am I right?
Without me, it's about 425 now with the upgrades.
Okay, then with you, it weighs 1,000.
I'm not quite that heavy. Maybe 657.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, it's built like a tank. All right. It's got balloon tires. It's got omnidirectional features to it. It is. The seat can tilt forward, it can tilt back for you to maneuver yourself in tight situations. Now, even though the government claims that you have legs, your legs are a bit iffy, right? You don't really like, we've had these problems in the past. So let's talk about your actual mobility issue for a second.
So at one point, the government did claim that I don't have legs.
Okay. All right. Well,
and that's due to the Universal Assessment System, UAS. It's something you have to go through when you're disabled and on services. They assess you every so often, and I had an assessment, and somebody wrote down that I had no legs. I had feet and no legs, but I had the ability to drive without assistive technology. That's what was written down in the required universal assessment system, right? And this is one of those box checking long form things that you go through with all of these different answers to answer. Most of them are checks, but sometimes you get to write something in. And when mistakes are made on something that complicated that directly oversees your care, I was fortunate. All I did was wrote down that I didn't have legs. It wasn't about my medication schedule. It wasn't about my direct overall care. In some situation, it is about those things, and that directly harms people.
Mm-hmm.
I make a joke of it because I wrote down that I don't have legs. They're firmly attached to my body, but it took 4 months, I think, 2 or 4 months, somewhere in that range, to get them to remove the ability to drive from that.
Oh, man, if you could drive, just imagine.
Right?
Yeah.
It took them 4 years to recognize that I have legs.
Okay. That's well,
Disturbing?
well, it's disturbing. Yes. And I think you're getting to a point already where when we campaigned for New York State Senate, you faced incredible challenges, right? Of just getting out of your house, of getting to events. Now,
Yep.
let the people know just how serious of a candidate you were. Like, how many votes did you end up getting?
Oh, wow. I think it was somewhere around or above 13,000 and roughly about 13%, something in that range.
Man, that was a big success that year for the libertarian machine, right? Like, you had people. Spike Cohen came and campaigned for you.
He would push me around when my wheelchair was broken down.
We did an event for you at the Southside Diner. What a good time we had. Spike is wonderful. Tasha, his beautiful wife, absolutely lovely. To kind of start you on your journey of what we're going to talk about tonight, one of the things that Spike has done is almost just step away from, I'm not going to campaign anymore, but I am taking libertarian action to educate people and to help people and to stand up for people getting busted for having a food kitchen on a Saturday, or raising awareness of a parent that loses their kids because of a box checking system in their local hospitals,
Yeah, in that case, what has been found, and I follow you of the Power quite closely. I used to work with them for quite a bit. Those cases are near and dear to my heart, and you're talking about Georgia.
Correct.
In Georgia, which it's true in most states, the states get paid by the federal government for taking children. There are positive reasons for taking children, and there are reasons that aren't so positive. In this case, they had the child abuse doctor on the take. They had the intermediary on the take, and they were quite deliberately not diagnosing children with severe disabilities like my own disability. When parents show up in the ER with a kid that has broken bones, it's probably OI or something like it. But they would diagnose them with child abuse instead, so that they could have an easy target of a less than easy to raise child to steal. And that, got them paid. That actually almost happened to me twice when I was small, right after birth and soon after. When a parent takes a child in the ER with broken bones, the first thing they do is call CPS. The second thing they do is look at their medical records.
Correct. Yes, when I first got out of college, I'm sure you remember this, but I was officially a Child Protective Services caseworker for a short period of time. And certainly a number of our home visits were going to figure out a child with an injury who had been brought into an ER, what had happened to the precursor to that injury and what is really going on in that house. And I'm sure on some level we can see some value to it. But when we see judges that are getting pardoned by the Biden administration who receive kickbacks from a for-profit private prison industry, I want to point out that our government runs on a similar model, regardless of whether it's actually for-profit or not. They need to have cases to continue to receive funding. So if you're not removing any kids from any homes ever, that program runs a risk of getting defunded. So perfect opportunity as a kid with a broken bone in a hospital for them to keep a program alive that probably has 7, 8, 9 people working in a local county. Okay. And that's a real incentive, guys. Like, that's one of the many problems that libertarians have with the way the government works. This isn't, I want to be, but I'm not like this anarchist crazy dude where we're going to just eliminate government tomorrow. Like, we're not going to. That a system of volunteerism is also not going to necessarily replace what we have as government. But today we're going to be talking about a foundation that you're involved with. But let's keep on. I'm sorry. You know how I get when I get excited to talk to you. I get jumping around from subject to subject. So let me turn it back over to you and get your thoughts on this system of government that we have, where we're incentivized to maintain programs that may not be close to meeting needs, Tom.
So, you also have to remember that everyone that works in those programs thinks they're doing the right thing. And it's very easy to get people to overlook instances of wrong to keep the greater good, if you will. And it's unfortunate that it works that way, but that's humanity. That's what people are like. Every level of worker in that system thinks their system is great. They're there to do good work. The work is always good. That may not be true, and there may be other perspectives, but that's what they believe, and that's what they think. And so they'll justify it every step of the way. They're trained how to justify it. And that's how you get a bad system run amok.
A bad system run amok. Even if it's a good system and it runs amok, that's bad, right? It ends up with horrible outcomes for real human beings.
Well, I mean, do you have any idea how many members of the Gestapo thought they were doing the right thing?
All of them, just to a certain extent, right? Like that's a conversation that let's have that conversation. That we've seen societies break all the way down because everybody thought they were doing the right thing. What do you think about that? Like, literally Hitler,
We're going back to 2016 now. I don't know if you remember that election cycle, but everybody was calling each other literally Hitler.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. That's how I named my cat, who's now passed. So these systems of greater good, well, we have one side of it in terminology, greater good. So what's the other side of greater good? The lesser and disposable.
All right. I see what you're saying there.
Right. So if for the sake of the greater good, we're willing to dispose of those who we deem as lesser, either in number or quality or value.
I've never really put words to it like that before. Like, I've never really I see a fallacy in the greater good. I see that the greater good leads to great evils. But when you point out what you're saying, that the greater good means that on some level a certain segment of society becomes expendable, that is
a fact.
That is a fact. That's a historically repeating fact. That is what happens.
And as libertarians, what do we believe in most, right? Our individual rights, the rights of the individual, right?
Right.
And so when we consider the greater good versus those we're willing to throw away, we are not, in that case, paying attention to the individual rights and liberty of those we're throwing away. We're saying it's okay to throw away the rights and liberty of some people so that we can save what we perceive as being more people.
So you get to the heart of democracy there, where all of a sudden we're talking about the 50.1% of the population dictating rights and rules and regulations on 49.9% of a population. And we get into this absurd scenario of your rights can be abridged because the majority doesn't like you, or the majority doesn't think you're serving the greater good. And I think that most people should recognize the absolute bizarre nature of that conversation, of that political philosophy that we see repeated throughout our the halls of power in our country. So I, I love where we're going with this so far, brother.
You know, when we were running and I
Yes.
was campaigning um, down near Binghamton, we stopped at a hockey rink just to canvass because we were canvassing businesses. And my campaign manager goes to try and find the owner or manager of the establishment, and I'm kind of stuck there sitting with some parents who were watching their kids and waiting to pick them up. And I'm talking to this guy, and he said he used to be a welfare fraud investigator.
All
And
right.
I asked him what that was like, and immediately his face turned gray.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he proceeds to tell me, all we did was kick people who needed help off of services that they needed, and it was usually over clerical errors.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you
yeah.
you could just tell how hard that hit him just to remember it.
Yeah. I do not have fond memories of being a child protective services worker. In the sense of, I do think I had some limited positive impact on a certain segment of people who were very much looking for help already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I found that system to be very challenging. I do think that there's good people in there trying to do good work and finding ways to get people closer to wanting help for themselves. That does include making people feel very uncomfortable with what they're doing, especially in protecting kids from abusive drug parenting kind of situations. I think that there is a side of me that still remembers the heady liberal days of my youth, that thinking we can solve a lot of problems with proactive government kind of working in the favor of the people. But at the end of the day, Tom, when we look around, and I think we could start talking about it, like when it comes to how they help you pick a wheelchair, let's talk about that for a little bit. Let's talk about, again, we get into this notion of they check boxes and they do an assessment on you and they can't find your legs or your feet, and like let's have that conversation.
Right. So that was through the state, through county services, uh, and it's required. But when it comes to getting wheelchair, that's a play between government regulation and insurance companies.
Oh,
Are
good.
Yeah,
Won't go
yeah.
badly at all, guys.
Oh,
Like
no, yeah, right.
a
Um,
collaboration between big government and big business. How's that work out?
so in 2014, I applied for the same wheelchair that I'd had every time since I was 15 years old. So I don't know, 5 or 6 times I'd had the same wheelchair over and over again. And actually, the only reason I ever needed a new one in the first place was because you were required to have your repairs done through that same service.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so it kind of became like a junk car. You'd fix one thing and then you'd have another thing broken and so on until they wouldn't fix it anymore. Um, that they stopped wanting to fix your wheelchair once it's 5 years old. They'll actually sooner buy you a new one than make a minor repair.
Wow.
So I fought that for about 2 years and I won. I won on appeal to get the specific wheelchair that I needed exactly 1 month after they stopped manufacturing them because insurance companies weren't paying for them.
The insurance companies decided not to pay
Well,
for
they
the
were allowed.
wheelchair.
They were allowed. It was a change in healthcare regulation that in New York that removed the 00 code, which was specifically geared towards if your doctor and physical therapist say you need it and it's on the market, you could have it.
In other words, they took the decision making away from the patient and the doctor and forced it into a schematic on a piece of paper that benefited them. Imagine that. Like, I wonder how much that specific regulation cost them to write. I
Right.
they
And
bought.
I don't know who supported that legislation financially, right? Because there's always lobbyists involved. I don't know all of that. All I know is that that's where the problem is. The regulations on insurance companies allow them to do these things. That's where you get the deny, defend, and Um,
Depose.
well, I think Depose was Luigi's specifically. I think the original book was Deny, Defend, and something else. Um, but that's where that comes from. It's allowed, right, by the government. And you and I both know how we feel about government legislation with healthcare.
Well,
Um,
it has stifled innovation. It has created a shortage of doctors. It has forced everything into big uh, locations. Big your physician, your local physician, is now part of a hospital in a big building where you no longer have you have to drive an hour to get there if you're in a small community. Okay, like how is
yeah,
Thomas Daniel Queter going to make a doctor's appointment when like your chair's not getting you there, bro? Like as awesome as your chair is, how I can't imagine the trials and tribulations of getting to a doctor's appointment in a big hospital an hour from your house, you know?
I have to find somebody willing to take a day off of work.
Wild. It's like that's a tough spot to be in, man. It really is.
Yeah, I do have an accessible vehicle that was also crowdfunded for me. Um, but, and I think we're hitting about 130,000 miles on that now.
Whew, brother. So we'll have to help crowdfund a new one when it you're part of an organization that does a lot of that, right? The Liberty Memes crew.
I am adjacent to them. That they crowdfunded the band I have, and I'm not a part of their organization, but I
All right.
do appreciate the good work they do.
Let's say tonight we have a goal, and that is to help you raise money for your project. But let's give a shout out to the Liberty Memes group, who does in fact do good work. But we want to talk about we impress upon people just how important it is what we're saying, that at some point in recent history during your life you lost the ability to have your doctor and you come up with a wheelchair that provides you with the ultimate mobility, the best mobility that you can have, something that since we've had so many conversations, I'm afraid I'm going to say something that I want you to say because I know your situation. So let's talk about when you were forced into a government regulation wheelchair. How did that go for you?
Well, I said no.
Right.
Uh,
Why
because
did you say no?
because I could easily recognize from knowing my condition for almost 40 years at that point, well, 36, that it would lead to injury and what's known in the disability realm or healthcare realm is going to the bed. Have you heard that term, Tim? Going to the bed?
I absolutely know what it means. Yes. Go ahead, though. But I think people out there may want to hear it. And it's important that we impress upon them what you're talking about. So please go ahead. When a handicapped person goes to bed, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, when you go to the bed, you're going there to die. It's
Mm-hmm.
hospice. They expect you not to come back. That is going to the bed. And I don't know if you remember my slogan, Tim, but it's Thomas Daniel Queter, never quitter and rarely quieter.
Regardless of the spelling of your last name, imagine that. And guys, that's real. When Tom and I were campaigning together, Tom was a zealous advocate for libertarian philosophies, a zealous advocate for people who were trapped in a system, a handicap system that purportedly exists to help people who we all agree decide, like we all agree we want to help people. We want the government to be organized in such a way as to help people. We don't like the fact that they are taking our taxes at the point of the gun, but we can look at things like a disabilities program and be like, all right, well, they're taking our money, but they're helping people like Queter. And then it turns out when you get to the brass tacks of it, you cannot get the wheelchair that you need through the government, right?
And
Am I
and
being accurate there?
yeah, and actually, at the beginning of all this, I thought, because of my extreme situation, severe disability, lesser known disability, that it was, just people in that situation. It turns out it's everybody. It's literally
Yeah.
everybody. Tim, if you end up in a situation where you need a wheelchair, I hope you come talk to me before your insurance company. Um,
I no, look, you know that I would do that. I, there's another statistic that people need to be aware of, right? That as you get older, the chances of you becoming disabled approach 100%. Okay, like That's a reality. So if and when I sustain an injury, you are going to be the first guy I come and talk to. Like that's an absolute reality. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this show. That's one of the reasons why I've donated money to this organization in the past. And I want to see you successful. I want people to know that I stake my reputation as a hardworking member of society, as somebody that pays my taxes, as somebody that believes in libertarian philosophy, that I stake my reputation on you, on what you're trying to do. And so now is the time to start describing what you do. And now you're wheeling away from the screen, bro. I just set you up. You can't wheel away now.
Grabbing an example.
Okay,
so,
do it. Yeah, brother. All right.
Some of us are very familiar with patent law.
Correct.
IP. In the DME, durable medical equipment industry, which is wheelchairs and a whole bunch of other things, that technology is stalled somewhere between the late 80s and the late 90s, right? And around us, every other piece of technology is flying at the speed of light. Do you remember what a cell phone was 20 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, well, 20 years ago, wheelchairs were better.
Say that again for emphasis, and say the fact, just you're on a subject that drives me crazy, that certain technologies have stagnated because of involvement with the government. Among them, and especially, is the medical industry technology. And now we're pointing, I have a guy here pointing at a specific one. Guys, you guys who listen to the radio show have heard me talk about a stagnation in medical technology. Regardless of the beliefs in or disbeliefs in the mRNA vaccine, there's a stagnation in medical technology. Go ahead, Queeter, talk about how they've done it to wheelchairs, bro. Please.
So they like to evergreen a patent, and that's where they make a little change so they can re-up the patent. And that change has become not to make it better, just to make it so they can hold on to it.
Yeah.
We're running into a situation where wheelchairs are becoming subscription services. And I like to remind people that you do not own your wheelchair, and you are expected to pretend to be happy. You know, we reach out to the community. We ask them, you know, what are you not able to do that your equipment should be facilitating you to be able to do? The number one answer is, I'd like to be able to leave my home, please. You're muted.
Thank you. What I said was, what a radical request, that you want the ability to leave your house with your wheelchair. Holy cow. All right.
Which I find it's interesting that I hear that from so many people now that we're doing what we're doing, because in 2014, when I was fighting to get a better wheelchair, I was told explicitly that the ability to get over the little threshold bump of my door and go down my nice smooth ramp to leave my home was not a valid justification for a better wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
Because the minute you're disabled, you're instantly free of all risk of house fire.
Oh my God. Okay.
It's just magic, Tim. They wave their wand. You'll never be in a situation of danger in your home.
Sure. Correct. Right. Like, you won't run into problems in your house where you need to evacuate. None of that. Like, yeah. Okay. That there is a certain level of absurdity to how government handles problems, and I think you're doing a very adequate job of demonstrating it. Amazingly enough, what I have now, Tom, that I want to share with everybody, because the crowd's finally getting to a good size, I want to share a trailer of a documentary that you're working on so that people get a real sense from a group of people. I love the trailer. I want to share it with the folks. All right. So
we started filming that in June, and we expect to finish it in February.
Okay. All right. It's so just bear with us. It's about 2 minutes long, and hopefully the sound comes through. If the sound doesn't come through right, guys, let us know right away, and I'll see what I can do about fixing that. All right. And Tom and I will be muted during that time.
So for people who aren't in wheelchairs and have no idea what somebody goes through,
it's typically not the person who's disabled or their doctor who gets to decide what equipment they get. You end up with intermediaries. You have PTs, OTs, and then you have the provider, which is a middleman company.
Do we think that that's enough for you to be in that chair then, you know, even though you're the one with the issues? There's nothing that it's empowering the disabled community to go out and do it themselves, except right now the competition that's trying to enter, which would be MIF.
We're doing open source DME because of the length of time it takes for repairs. And instead of waiting 2 years for a wheelchair, it might be 2 months.
Thomas Queter from Mount Upton, who has a rare disease called osteogenesis imperfecta, is aiming to help those who have disabilities.
What I hear most often from people is, I'd like to be able to leave my home.
You don't find yourself going places because you worry about your equipment working or not working.
What we want to accomplish with open source designs is we want those designs to be out there. What you want to do with the chair will be up to you.
Why should I trust someone else's opinion of what I need in a wheelchair when I'm the one with the best understanding of my situation?
Disabled people are consistently let down by the systems that are supposed to support them.
I want to see a better world again. I want to see better people being better to each other.
We don't have to leave people behind. We have the means to figure out how to not only survive, but thrive.
I founded the Mobility Independence Foundation because the best way to help those with disabilities is to endow them with what they need to help and include themselves.
Bravo, brother. I love that. That hits the mark on so many levels. You and I could talk about this for hours. You guys encapsulated it in 2 minutes. As you know, I have supported this foundation in the past. I am going to support it again in the future. What I want people to know, there's a real money crunch going on in your situation. So the Mobility Independence Foundation has successfully raised money in the past. You have traveled all over the country to talk to people. Let's share the page right now, and then we'll share it again in a few minutes, later on after we talk a little bit more. But I want people to see how to go to this page and take a look at what's going on there. There's lots of great information. One of the things that this page does is connect people with parts from old wheelchairs to, your specific need for a broken wheelchair, which is absolutely fantastic. These things are very durable, but obviously things on them are going to work. They're going to wear out. The bearings are going to wear out. The joysticks are going to wear out. The batteries are going to wear out. All of these things. You've created a whole system here. So tell the people what goes on at this website, Tom.
So soon we will be introducing a web portal designed by the Rochester Institute of Technology students. They're doing an amazing job. We have, I don't know how many nonprofits just waiting for us to launch it. This system does 2 things, maybe 3. First, if you're a nonprofit that's working to repair wheelchairs, because the systems are not, and those nonprofits exist in almost every community across the country, by the way, because that's how big the problem is. They have trouble accessing parts and schematics and information. And what our web portal does is allow them to inventory all of their internal parts and wheelchair and other equipment storage that they use to deliver to people who are in need of it because the systems are failing. Also repairs that the systems tend to fail to provide adequately. And then they can decide which of that inventory they want to make public to all of the other nonprofits that join the web portal. When they're on the web portal on their own account, they can see and search, similar to like the Amazon's search engine, what they're looking for, and figure out if someone somewhere else in the country, maybe eventually in the world, has that part. And this came out of one specific situation. Through my advocacy, I ran into an organization in New Jersey that had a whole chair that needed a specific part. But because when the company that made that wheelchair made the next iteration, they changed it enough that you couldn't just buy the new part. And even then, you have to have a dealership license in order to buy that part, which the big DME companies now, because of the regulations upon them through our healthcare system, they've gone to a subscription model. They actually make more money selling those licenses to repair than they do selling the equipment. Similar to Apple.
My God, man, can I throw an analogy in here? What they've done in the past, and this is just to broaden out the scope of how this technological capture works. With diabetes insulin medicine, they changed some molecules in insulin to repatent it and then force everybody into a higher bracket for insulin costs. Insulin is basically very valuable to people with diabetes. It's readily accessible. It's technologically advanced enough to be made for a relatively inexpensive amount of money when it's off of patent protection. Recently, I think it was 2022, they changed a few of the molecules in it, made claims that it actually works better, and then re-upped the patent protection and got written into legislation that this is the new type of insulin that we've got to use. This is exactly what they did with the wheelchair industry, right? Like, it's the same exact thing. It's technological capture for profit when everything could be easier. They don't want to compete. They love the advantages of what legislation can give them.
So here's why movements like ours are important, in my opinion. Those on the right hate wasting money.
Yeah, they do.
Those on the left hate wasting lives. This issue wastes both.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good line. Well done. Well done, brother.
So that means that we can draw on support if you're on the left or if you're on the right or if you're in the center. You're probably going to care about anybody, and particularly yourself once you're in a wheelchair. And as you pointed out earlier, Tim, if you live long enough and you do not die suddenly, you will end up dependent on equipment.
Absolutely. I mean, in a way, I'm already highly dependent on my vehicle. So, like,
right.
It's not. I mean, I do fight old age to the best of my ability, but there's a certain reality. Like, I am not 30 anymore and made of steel. And like, I used to feel bulletproof, and now it's like a long, cold day and I'm falling asleep. Like, I have a 3-mile drive home to the hotel and I'm falling asleep on the way. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Things change as you get older, guys. Let's give a shout out to some of the people out in the audience making comments. My buddy Legacy Zach, all right, he out there bittersweet. He watched. I believe that is a comment on the trailer from your documentary. It was really well done, Tom. Congratulations to you and the crew that put it together.
Miter Box. I have to thank Miter Box. They're a great company if you're filming anything.
Okay, Miter Box it is. All right, so that they helped you guys out, put that together, and they're helping you with the documentary?
Yes, they are the film crew that we're paying to make and develop the documentary. There's a lot that goes into a documentary. A lot of people don't realize we're shooting somewhere around 20 times the footage that'll actually end up in the documentary. Because you have to cut and choose and, to make the best impact through the documentary.
Okay, that's great. Look, guys, also while we're on this subject, thank you, Zach, for your comment. Thomas Daniel Queter will effectively demonstrate that he is an expert in this field. If you have questions about what he is talking about right now, if you want more information about what his foundation is going to continue to do, regardless of whether you guys help him tonight or not, because I'm already going to help him. They have a goal. You guys saw it on the donate page. Like, let's take a look at if you've got an extra $10. Let's take a look if you've got an extra $50. See if you can go to that link and make a donation. But if you have a question that you think you can stump Thomas Daniel Queter about mobility independence, about how the government does not necessarily do a good job serving disabled individuals, put them in the chat, put them in the comments, guys, because A, that's going to help people see this, and B, I think Tom's going to impress you. Matter of fact, I guarantee it. And if he doesn't, I'll make something up and I'll make a stupid joke and everybody will laugh. So that's going to be that. Gordon's out there saying hi, people. We get it. He's got a little cannabis Christmas tree out there. We love stuff like that. Tom's a big proponent of legalizing marijuana, as am I, and always have been. Guys, here's another example of how the medical industry captures molecules in a product that grows out of the earth and turns it into anti-seizure medicine for insane amounts of money, up to $1,200 a month, when you could just smoke some. Well, I am not a medical doctor, but they have captured compounds in the cannabis product that they now have patented, and they're getting exorbitant fees for it. The medicine's highly effective. That's a good thing. I do think it should be cheaper.
Yeah, it's also extremely easy to make yourself.
Oh, okay, good. We can talk about that.
Well, so when I was 11 years old, my orthopedic surgeon shook the bottle of prescription painkillers that he had for me and said, "Hey, you know, these are no good for you. You should go get some marijuana." Right. So at that time, it was 1994. You know what happened in 1994, right?
I vaguely remember 1994, but I'll tell you what, Tom, it's not my best year. Go ahead and tell me.
Joe Biden's crime bill. That.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
when it went into effect and they started jailing people for selling weed. Yes, correct.
Or having small amounts of cannabis. I mean, some people went to prison for life over a dime bag of cannabis.
Well, they just did that to black kids, right?
Yeah. Well, and cancer patients went to jail for what would become lesser of the rest of their lives for using cannabis.
Yeah.
And Kamala Harris was actually a big part of prosecuting those cases in California.
And she laughed about it. Like, she never took it seriously. She never realized the damage that she did to human beings, like regardless of their race or their gender or where they grew up, like, or their financial circumstances. She put them in jail for smoking or selling marijuana. Tiny little bits of it, bro. And she thought it was funny. She thought it was funny.
And we don't mean a weekend in your local jail. We mean federal prison.
Wait, what?
Yeah. A lot of those people went to federal prison.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I thought you were advocating for Kamala Harris to get thrown into a federal prison. And I was like, I'm bored, brother. Let's do it. I mean, I want to disempower the government, but some things just feel right.
Yeah, a lot of things feel right, but not necessarily right.
Correct. And that's where we lose, because we are philosophically I shouldn't say that's where we lose. We have strength in our communities. We have strength. We have an opportunity tonight to help out the Mobility Independence Foundation. And so let's focus on the good things. Let's not get Tim on a crazy anti-government rant. I know one's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, so interestingly, what Shelley says there, I actually know another young disabled engineer, by the way. It's amazing. We're at a time in life where people with disabilities are graduating with degrees in engineering, and they actually know what they're doing and talking about. It's almost like we should let them go forth and solve the problems in the industries that affect them.
Wild thought. A wild thought, man.
So that young engineer is actually designing, it's a different piece of equipment, but it's a competitor to something on the market for almost $7,000 that routinely breaks down and doesn't have very good controls. And they've developed it from e-bike parts. And it can be made for less than $500.
Oh, all right. Well,
and it's open source.
See, that's the thing. All right. So perhaps us boomers, and I'm not actually a boomer, but like I'm a Gen Xer. When we get into open source, we hear open source and we remember lines of code on pages where people were like crafting apps out of them. Let's talk about what open source means in the field of wheelchair maintenance and repair. All right. And design, right? Let's talk about what that means.
Right. We actually have to think about it in terms of open source hardware. And something that I'm trying to impose upon people who are more economically minded, particularly libertarians, Republicans. Germany is coming out with open source smartwatches, laptops, digital cameras. Open source equipment is being developed across the world. And if we don't start doing it here, we're going to fall behind.
That should scare Americans. They never like to fall behind to Germany. We know what's happened in the past with that game plan.
Right. Or Pakistan. I mean, if Pakistan's developing better technologies than we are, we got a problem. And they are.
Right. Well, free trade benefits everybody, and free trade is anti-war. So if they come up with a good e-bike, I'm like, all right, fine. But I get what you're saying. We have genius. We have Tom, I don't know if you caught the show, but I did a little like in-house tour of an old machine shop in Hartford, Connecticut, and it was absolutely, you know me well enough to know that things like that trip my triggers, right? Like they have 75 machines, like, and 4 guys kind of crafting out these wild stamping machines that, like, you use a harder steel to stamp onto a softer steel, like what you see on a gun barrel to identify the maker and the registration number, things like that. These are the guys that make those things. It was, for me, nostalgic and beautiful. And they're like, look, when CNC machines cannot do what we do, okay? And the guys are, both the guys that own it are like old, Tom. You know, they're older than the Freedom variant. They're like, when that technology is lost, it's lost probably forever. So
let's get back to open.
Please, thank you. I lost my track there.
The term open source just means that the schematics, the designs, the how-tos, and in terms of software, the code, right, the software package is released for free. And if you're going to use it to make money, usually there's a license called an open source license that says you have to pay a license fee in order to use it. With open source hardware, you can do this in 2 ways. You can just release the designs completely for free for anybody to make for themselves or manufacture for profit, or you can do what we're aiming to do. And that's where, Tim, if you want to make your own endurance power chair and our designs are released, you are perfectly capable of obtaining everything you need, including the knowledge to do that. But if you want to start making them for profit, you're going to have to pay the foundation just a little bit so we can continue our work.
Just a couple bucks, right? Like,
we're nothing egregious.
All right. I think people could wrap their heads around that. I think that's fair, right?
Right. And the other thing that we're doing with our approach to the open source hardware is we're sourcing as many parts that are off the rack as possible. I use dirt bike tires because I order them on a Friday. They get there on a Monday, and we install them on a Tuesday. We don't wait 6 months for the systems to argue about who pays for it and whether or not they're going to pay for it and what specific tires they're going to pay for. I get the tires I want, and I get them in a timely fashion. Same with batteries.
Wow, did we have a problem finding new batteries for that early on in that campaign season? Do you remember that? And we found a local guy who just went out of his way to help you out, bro. Like, it was awesome. Tom Mickle? Was it Tom? Yeah, Tom Mickle.
So batteries is another thing that we've gone to upgrade. Those batteries that you're talking about were old style Group 24 sealed lead acid batteries.
Correct.
They're warranted for about 6 months at peak performance. And if you're lucky, they'll last you 2 years at median performance, right?
Well, it starts to fade after that first 6 months rapidly, right? Like, it kind of starts going downhill. Yeah, I understand. I think everybody kind of gets that about batteries. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And if you only partially charged them and then went, then you would damage their ability to take up that full charge again. So you can't just plug in for a couple hours. You have to wait until that charger kicks off.
Till it's dead, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So interestingly, those cost me about $700, right? To buy those lead acid batteries off the rack, about $700. Lithium iron phosphate with a onboard battery management system, which is a computer that controls it to make sure, to make sure that that the battery doesn't fault, right? And we've investigated this heavily. The lithium iron phosphate batteries, you can shoot them with a shotgun, and they don't do more than fizzle. You can drop them off a tall building onto a concrete slab, and you might crack the concrete slab, and nothing else happens.
Wow. All right. Game on.
Right. Now, lead acid batteries only deliver 50% of the charge that they're rated for. So if it says 100 amp hour, you can only get 50 amp hours out of it.
Right.
The LiFePos or lithium iron phosphates, you can get 80 to 90% of that.
That's fantastic. Are they wildly more expensive? Do you have a supplier for them?
There are many suppliers for them. You can buy them on Amazon.
All right.
Yeah. So a set of these batteries costs about $500, which is a couple $100 less than the lead acid, right? And they're warranted for peak performance, depending on the brand, for somewhere between 7 and 11 years. If the mathematicians in the crowd are here, right? How much savings is that over the course of 11 years, right? Because you can buy those lead acids, in my case, at least once a year
Right.
for 11 years at $700 a pop, or you can buy a single set of lithium iron phosphates for 500 and have it last that whole 11 years. That's a huge amount of savings.
That is, yeah, and I think to not be stuck having to change your batteries once a year or twice a year, like that in and of itself is an amazing thing. Yeah, so all of this sounds really positive, but the reality is that you can't continue this project without money, right? Like, guys, that's real. I'm posting links on my Facebook. I'm posting links on Twitter. I'm donating money tonight. Our buddy Gordon out there says he designed a lift to get you off the ground when you fall out. That fantastic. Get in touch with Queter. He'll help you popularize it, right? Like that sounds good.
I do want to continue a little bit though.
Please.
We are raising money, and there are some specific reasons for raising money. 2 opportunities have popped up that we had not budgeted for, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. I don't know if you're familiar with the company called SolidWorks.
I am not.
They are the premier and leading computer-aided drafting company in the world.
Okay.
Computer off. I need to remember to turn that thing off before I do this.
Tell that computer to settle down over there.
Right. So they're the big wigs. They're the biggest, baddest computer-aided drafting software in the world. They're the ones that grant this software to all of our tech universities in this country. They're what everything fancy is designed upon. Our contracted machine shop's fearless leader, Devin Hamilton, who's originally out of Delhi, New York, and now lives in Redwood, New York. Also a farm boy like myself.
Fantastic. And myself, really. I had.
Yep.
Yes, carry on. I was a farm boy for a little while as well.
You're not in a wheelchair, Tim. It doesn't count.
It was slightly different experience. That's true.
I'm only teasing. Of course it counts. Cows eat no matter what, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Devin has won a prize with them before and been at the top of their list of people using their software. Through that connection, SolidWorks, which throws on 3D Experience World, and you can look it up at 3dexperienceworld.com, I believe is the world's largest computer-aided drafting software convention on Earth.
Wow.
And it's in Houston in the end of February. They are giving us approximately $20,000 worth of amenities and tickets to take our people and to present, including I believe it's 30 by 50 obstacle course for the chair, covering our liability so that people can get in the chair and try the obstacle course, show off that trailer that you just showed, as well as our first trailer, show off our designs in the CAD software. And as it stands, we need about $10,000 by the end of February to be able to go to this, where there's a lot of connections to make, a lot of people in the tech field. And it's interesting because we're reaching out to other organizations, and there's this strange overlap between communities that you wouldn't expect. There's the nonprofit world that's trying to serve those with disabilities, right?
Right.
And they're closing up shop left and right across the country, by the way. The funding is drying up no matter who's in the White House. And tech companies, people developing technology.
All right.
Yesterday, met with somebody who's taking the concept of the annoying Alexa device over here and trying to make that more geared towards people who use wheelchairs.
Okay. That
So-
makes sense, right?
Yeah, so they've developed this smart home thing that's very specific to people with disabilities, and very secure and able to work offline, meaning not on the internet if you want to protect your privacy. But it can, turn on lights, turn on your oven, turn on your microwave, open your door, the whole 9 yards. So the sky's the limit with technology these days. And we're hoping to develop that relationship to be a voice-activated wheelchair that can take you to places when you're unable to drive it.
Oh, I love it. That's fantastic.
Right.
You guys are helping push towards self-driving autonomous vehicles. As far as I'm concerned, that is something that I feel very, and again, listeners of the show know it's a standard rant of the Freedom variant that we don't have self-driving flying cars, and I'm really disappointed by it.
Me too.
It sounds like you're helping get us there.
Yeah, so I've always been disappointed in the EV market, starting with automobiles, because wheelchairs are so terrible. But we are actually benefiting from the existence of the EV market. The motor controller we have in development, which is what the joystick and HID would talk to actuate the motors. We use parts from the EV world, and we use them because they're better and they've become cheaper.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's wonderful news. Things that are not captured by the government get cheaper over time and get more readily accessible by everyday people. And I love, like, I'm an old dude, but I love technological advancement. I think I love this computer. I love this fact that you and I can have a conversation. We're about 70 miles apart right now, 60 miles apart, but we're talking in real time and we're talking to a lot of people. And this is that technology is mostly wonderful, till AI decides it wants to, breathe.
I'm ready to become Skynet.
Yeah. Hook me in, man.
Right. So again, the reality is that these things are moving at the speed of light, right? And we're all super attached to our cell phone, emotionally speaking, because they encourage our dopamine response. They're addictive. The other things that encourage the dopamine response are things like heroin or meth or pain. Some people become addicted to pain and then join the Libertarian Party.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's masochistic, but there's value there. The problem with it, as you and I were talking ahead of the show, is the competing factions in the Libertarian Party that have decided that they are going to out-criticize each other and think that is going to make them popular. And it's like that, guys. Look, I was a bartender for a long time, a restaurant professional. That was never the game plan, was to get my customers to hate like the other bar. What it was to get crowds growing, people hanging out, and everybody having fun. When I look at the Libertarian Party, I think I see what I would call an absurd mess that doesn't understand outreach. I think that we've had some impressive victories that not everyone feels comfortable celebrating. We've had some impressive failures that nobody wants to acknowledge. And the number one failure that we have is a failure to be cool to each other, even though we're not using the same words to express our belief in freedom. That we get caught up by design, Tom. We get caught up in culture war issues. And look, I'm saying we have no impact on the culture war. We have zero impact on the culture war. We have zero business talking about the culture war when we could be talking about helping people get wheelchairs, helping people figure out how to make their own weed medicine, things that could probably be really important to a freer, funner, more successful society, technological innovation, how regulatory capture has stagnated the healthcare industry, how regulatory capture has increased profitability for insulin by changing a couple of molecules. And I know somebody out there is going to be like, Tim doesn't know what he's talking about. You're right. I don't know what I'm talking about, but take a look at it yourself and see if you come to the same conclusion. Okay. Like, that's something that's real. That's something that's ongoing because of Phil's campaign coffers. So they get the wink and the nod and the yucks and the handshaking, and they get something codified into law that now all of a sudden Medicare and Medicaid accept paying for this new form of insulin when the old form of insulin is just as effective. It's obscene and it's absurd, and I want it to be better.
In terms of hardware, you should look at the EpiPen. Because the only thing held under IP with that was the delivery device.
Mhm.
They extinguished any competition for that delivery device, and they held the patent on that delivery device. It was not the medication inside. That's just epinephrine. You can get that at any doctor's office, hospital. And the mechanism of delivery, right, the little shot mechanism, that's what was patented. And they used that patent to drive up that price.
Correct.
And that's why, you had to pay $1,200 or $1,400 to save your child when they had an anaphylactic shock.
Yeah. The EpiPen is a perfect example of an extremely expensive piece of medical equipment that is a very simple design that could be a fraction. It could be produced at a fraction, but because it gets like intellectual property protections that should not exist on something that was working before, when the technological protection expired, okay, then they redesigned it. And then the government said, yeah, this is a great idea. So it went from $100 to $300. Now I think they're $700, something like that, like some absurd price.
I know they've been as high as 14.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yes, I am lucky that I don't need an EpiPen to carry an EpiPen with me, but
I don't either. I just advocate for enough people that I know the things that nobody wants to know.
Yeah. Let's go to a few more comments out there. I see my Aunt Joanne is out watching us from Florida. Amazed at the miracles of technology. Aunt Joanne, thank you for joining us. When I go live, Aunt Joanne, it's generally every Wednesday night about 9:00. For the radio show, Kevin, my friend Kevin, and I do an hour show that gets broadcast out of Rochester on WSL, and then down in the Hornell area on WLEA and WCKR. Now, as you probably know, Aunt Joanne, I'm still working full time. This is for fun, but we have a very serious issue tonight. My friend Thomas Daniel Queter is a libertarian disability advocate who has recognized the problems with a governmental system that has captured every piece of his life, that the only way for him to find success and to get the wheelchair that he needs is to do his best to step outside that system. He has a wheelchair that isn't being manufactured anymore. So he has to find parts, design fixes, and implement strategies to keep this thing working. And I've seen the wheelchair. This is a great idea. As he shares the processes that he goes through, he developed a foundation to help other people who need wheelchairs like his, and not the one size fits all government wheelchair that's out there that you can say, here's your wheelchair. You can't use it to leave your house. You're not going to be able to wheel yourself to the freaking grocery store. Like, Tom's wheelchair will go up and down hills. It will take him from point A to point B, relative ease, relative comfort, giving his current limitations in mobility. So that's what we're doing tonight. I am so glad you have joined me. Say hi to Uncle John, and thank you for participating tonight.
Yeah, it actually does more than you've seen now, Tim.
Okay, let's lay that on there. Let's see. Talk about the progress.
So when we switched to the LiFePO battery, lithium iron phosphate, there's an interesting difference between lead acid and lithium iron phosphate. Once you start drawing on a lead acid battery, the voltage drops. Right, just the act of moving gives you less voltage than the battery is rated for.
Correct. Everybody, yeah. Okay.
Right, with a lithium iron phosphate, it doesn't drop.
Oh, really? It keeps delivering voltage for
continuously to the last.
No way.
And steadily.
Really?
Same voltage rate. So what does that mean, Tim, in terms of uses? That means that this wheelchair is now a mountain goat.
Oh, okay. All right. I love it. I love it. That's fantastic, Tom. That's fantastic.
But I've always liked to climb the washed out tractor trails in the hills behind the house.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What you don't know is that I can go 3 times as far through 3 times the worst terrain.
Well, first of all, that's fantastic news. And I think everybody is currently aware of the technology of batteries has not advanced as fast as we need them to. But what you're saying is that you've seen a drastic improvement in your life anyway. And that's fantastic because battery technology has advanced. I can see it in my power tools that I use to assemble.
It's not being applied.
Okay. Yeah, so you're finding ways to apply it directly to your situation. And
Right.
those are plans that people can find at the Mobility Independence Foundation, correct?
They will be able to once we finalize and tested for safety. We're not going at this half-assed. We are still in production of prototypes, still in testing of prototypes, and we're starting with the Omega Track, which was on the market and no longer is. Those patents are up. Our IP team, which is voluntary, they're all retired from Xerox actually.
Oh, really?
And they've helped us go through the patents and ascertain that we can reverse engineer, upgrade, and release those designs as open source. And that's where we're at now. In terms of upgrading, you might be aware this wheelchair has an oil bath transmission.
Correct.
We run two 12 volts in series at 100 amp hours. So it's a 24 volt system from two 12 volt batteries. So
no stumping there, Shelley. Nice try.
Right. What that means is instead of, in the past, when I needed a repair, I would call the provider, say, I need this repair. The provider would schedule an appointment to come verify that it needs the repair, right? Because that's the only way you can justify it to the insurance company, right? And then once that's verified, if you're lucky enough that the tech knows what they're doing, which is rare, you and the provider go to bat with the insurance company to get approval. Sometimes that's quick and easy. Sometimes that draws out, right? But then you're waiting on the process of insurance approval regardless. That's at least weeks, but I've seen it be 5 years. And I'm not done. I know you want to say something. And so I was trapped in my apartment for 5 years. You know this, Tim.
Yes.
And over this issue. And
Yes.
when I thought, man, that's got to be my specific situation because of my specific disability and the need for my specific chair. And it turns out that happens to a lot of people. Now, once the insurance company approves, then you're waiting for parts. And because this industry is heavily locked down with intellectual property and very arduously bureaucratic, that can take some time. And then you have to be fortunate enough to have the right parts show up. And then you have to be fortunate enough that your provider has a tech that knows what to do with those parts, right? And that's how we end up in the situation where 50% of all wheelchairs are breaking down in a 6-month period. 88% if you limit the demographic to combat veterans or military veterans. Then we have this issue of wheelchairs go to the dump essentially in 3 to 5 years. We're paying between $10,000 and $85,000 for a piece of equipment that goes in the trash in 3 to 5 years, right? The market share, how many wheelchairs we sell in this country? About 2 million. Wheelchair users is about 5.5 million. You do the math, it makes sense.
Yeah. Designed obsolescence, when in fact you have the wheelchair that works for you. That maintenance would be nice, that if you had to, like, literally you would not replace this wheelchair unless you could get exactly the same model,
right,
for a better price. Like, you have no incentive to change wheelchairs to the government issued standard wheelchair. It would be awful for you.
Right. And they are downgrading a lot of parts over this last handful of decades. You see plastic where it should be steel. You see aluminum where it should be something better. They're just skipping all the way. And you see fake suspension on a lot of these wheelchairs. Fake. Right? Yeah, I've seen springs that are fully compressed when somebody sits in it. That's not a suspension.
That can't be a good idea at all.
No. And you know my wheelchair, right? I've got Air Ride. It comes out of the tractor trailer industry. No, it's not the Air Ride for the trailer itself. It's the smaller airbag system that they use to spare the truck driver's back. It's a seat. For about $400, you can buy those airbags, and they're readily available everywhere.
All right.
You can actually buy them on Amazon.
Okay. All right. That's good. That's really good.
So what does this do in terms of delivery, right? It is not uncommon to wait 2 years for total approval and delivery of a wheelchair.
Wow.
In some states, they get that down to about a year. In other states, because we now have this Medicare, Medicaid coexistence healthcare program, despite the fact that it's very clearly written which one should pay for it, they'll spend another year arguing over which one pays for it.
Of course they will. I mean, of course they will. Like
Right.
that is in fact part of the system. It's a feature, not a bug. It's the payers want that. They want to delay payment for as long as possible. And that's an unfortunate reality. But as we're talking about, you have crafted a workaround, and I think that is fantastic.
So I want to ask you a question, Tim.
Do it.
Have you ever owned a four-wheeler?
I have.
Okay. When it was broken down and you had the resources to repair it, whether you sent it to a shop or you did it yourself, how long did it take you to get it repaired?
Well, I can use the example of my boat this summer, which I had an unfortunate experience of not paying attention. I have an older boat, like everything I own. Everything I do the maintenance on because I tend to enjoy that. Okay. So I had an unfortunate experience where I did not allow the water to drain out of the boat and the starter got soaked in the middle of winter. Okay. So what I did was take that starter apart, clean it up, go buy 2 new bolts, put it back on. Boom. It worked for a little while. But then it broke again, Tom, and I bought a starter off of Amazon for $50, and it was the wrong starter. Sent it back, bought another starter, came in, right starter. That one was $65. This whole process, Tom, of getting the wrong part, taking a new part, sending it back, that took, I think it was a total of 7 days. Like, that's what it took. 7, 8 days. My boat was up and going. Even my shoddy repair to the starter the first time around kind of worked, but it just was really inconvenient. So that took 7 days. 7. And my boat was working again.
Didn't take you 5 months.
It did not take me 5 months. My boat would be covered with ice. It would be frozen into the lake right now. You know what I mean? Like, it took 7 days. I may be exaggerating how long it took. I can't remember. It probably took 7 days because I had to go to work in the middle of that for a few days, and I didn't get to try to install the wrong part and realize that it was the wrong part, return it, and get the new part. You see what I mean? Like,
right.
That was all through Amazon because you can't find this stuff locally. And like, yes, your Advanced Auto Parts could get it for you in a day, but then they're going to charge you like 3 times as much money, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, 7 days, Tom, that's what it took.
All right. And what we've discovered is that most wheelchairs, and even mine, which is so, as you put it, rugged and badass, they're easier to fix than four-wheelers.
Oh, I believe it.
Right. We have discovered that given the right information and tools and parts, a high school tech class could build one, let alone repair one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Right. So why do we need this arduous system that costs so much money and detriments so many lives? I mean, we need the system as a safety net beneath our feet, not pressing down on top of our heads. And that's a change that needs to be made in all of our healthcare, welfare, pre this and pre that systems. If you're going to help someone, just help them. Don't make it a part-time job for them to get that help.
I think you're making an amazing point there. That a system that is purports to serve people has become, at the very least, unintentionally oppressive, unintentionally injurious, And look, guys, I'm not really willing to give them a benefit of the doubt. If there's profit to be made by a narcissist somewhere along the lines that they can graft onto some power and siphon off some funds for themselves, I think they're going to do that. I think that's one of the real problems in the medical equipment industry and in the pharmaceutical industry. That's my anti-government rant, that they're in there being parasites. But what you're doing is absolutely circumventing that system. And I think that's fantastic.
Right? It's an option. It's another choice to make.
Yes.
Right? Or another choice to have.
A competition, if you will, a competition. Like that's competition to serve fellow man, to serve a need is what made this country great. It will continue to make us great. We do have to remove some of these obstacles. How do you feel about this Doge thing and this Elon Trump thing? Do you think that they'll find a way to serve people in the disability segment of the population better?
You're asking me to care about the federal government?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
unfair. That was an
I
unfair
mean,
question.
look, I mean, with a name like that, everybody's going to have high hopes. The Department of Government Efficiency. The problem is, it's
Government department.
Yeah, Brian is a point, and I go all the way through the wall.
He will.
Yes, stud frame wall. This will drive through it. So, a house fire is not a problem for me.
Yeah. So look, I put up comments so that you don't necessarily have to just jump right off. I just wanted to get you preloaded on the comment. So we were heading down a pretty good road there. We were talking about like the government and its inefficiency and how we fight that with a perfectly sane, voluntaristic response, right?
Right. So, if you pay taxes or have a business, your donations are tax deductible. You can write it off as a business expense. Talk to your accountant first, but typically that is the way it can work. And that allows us to do the arduous overhead that these companies use to justify their patents and price. It costs us so much money to develop this, even though they're using the same designs that they had in the mid 90s. The ultimate benefit of an open source power wheelchair is that you get what you want and need, not what other people who don't know you tell you can have. And I can use our work with universities as an example for that. The University of Rochester, different from the Rochester Institute of Technology, has given us a student team. They're already one semester in to work on a seating system very similar to the one you've seen me have, Tim, but a little better. What I know about people who gain a disability is that usually first they gain weight. So they'll gain their disability, they'll get a wheelchair that's fitted to them, they'll gain weight, it no longer fits them, they get another wheelchair, their lifestyle adjusts, they lose that weight, and then they need yet another wheelchair. So instead of one wheelchair that adjusts, they have 3 wheelchairs at the cost and expense, and all of the time and arduous paperwork in between. If you want a clue on how arduous it is to navigate these systems, I will say 2 things. I listen to NPR. I know a lot of libertarians say, "Oh, you liberal." Well, I listen to NPR because it's government funded, and if you can read between the lines, you can figure out what they're trying to message.
Right.
But sometimes, because libertarians, we're not left or right. We're kind of both in some regards.
We're both, and then we fight in the middle. We
Right.
fight for that middle ground. Congratulations, libertarians. You drive me nuts.
So I heard on NPR the other day, 2 days ago, a wounded military veteran compare navigating the healthcare systems to navigating the 7 circles of hell.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a good analogy.
Right? Then for anybody who's a sci-fi fan and likes fantasy and dramatic abstractions, there's an old movie. Actually, Robert De Niro had a bit part in it, and it's called Brazil. It has nothing to do with the country, but the whole thing is this very outlandish abstraction of the paperwork a guy goes through to get his air conditioning fixed.
De Niro was the rogue air conditioning fixer who busted into somebody's house and said, "I'll fix this, but you can't tell anybody." And it opened up a can of worms where it was the end of the world for the government, and they had to crack down, right? Like they had to take on the dissidents who would dare fix their own air conditioning without government paperwork approval, knowledge, and graft. I think.
Yeah.
Graft's the right word.
Um,
Just wild.
Yeah, and they were actually chasing that guy through the streets. But that's essentially what it's become. I mean, that was a prediction, right? A bureaucracy.
Sure.
And when it comes to helping people who are in severe disability situations, I don't think bureaucracy is what we need getting in the way. Interestingly, bureaucracy, right? Now we're also fiscally sound. Libertarians tend to be, we want less for more.
Correct.
What we're doing is it's the cost of the chair, right? It's not the cost of all the bureaucracy.
Right.
And when I talk about bureaucracy, the last time when I was denied and won my appeal 1 month after they stopped making the wheelchair I needed, I went through 21 or more appointments with doctors, PTs, OTs, and social workers to get denied.
What an absurdity that must have been. How frustrating must that have been to you to put yourself into that system, throw yourself against that wall, knowing as smart as you are that it was going to be a wall that you were beating your head against, like regardless, like you had to go the next step and you knew that was going to be endless. How did that make you feel, Tom? Like, I'm mad just thinking about it, but go ahead.
Yeah, lost and hopeless. It made me depressed. And, you throw on top of that being stuck in my apartment with everything that I love in life, literally on the other side of the wall. My garden, the outdoors, woods, the farm.
I've been at your house. Let me just comment. Your garden your family has done a wonderful job setting up you to do some gardening, to contribute to the food that gets brought into the house, adding value to how you feel. Like, and when you're denied that, when you can't wheel yourself down the row to go pick weeds when you're waiting for a part for a stupid government approved wheelchair, I can imagine how frustrating that would be, because we all have analogies that we can draw from in life, but I can't, at the end of the day, live that experience in my brain. And I think that's something that why I am so passionate about sharing your mission to raise some money to get this program to go, to keep it going, to keep building consensus, to get this interactive form on the website where people with extra parts can find people who have parts coming in, to get designs out there where it's like, hey, if you build this thing, this is going to serve you better. And here's how you do it right here on paper. You're going to build it for $10,000 when, if you can even find one, they're going to cost $30,000 or $40,000, and you're going to have to revamp it anyway. Like, this is an amazing opportunity to serve handicapped, mobility impaired people in your life. Handicapable, whatever word you want to put on it. Let's get people like Queter moving around society, because that's going to benefit us all. And doing that, giving money to the cause. I've got it posted right there. Give some money. Do it now. Give us a retweet. Remember, I've already offered, I see a lot of people out there watching us on Twitter. I appreciate the fact that you guys are here, but we have gotten almost 0 comments from you, and it's time to step up. Try to stump Queter about your wheelchair problem. Try to introduce them to somebody who has a wheelchair who can share their story, and perhaps Queter will have an answer for them about their mobility issues. I guarantee, as a matter of fact, when we were campaigning, that was one of his specialties. We would meet people who had problems. Queter would help them navigate the system, or help them find someone who was outside of the system that was still offering help for that specific problem. It was an amazing benefit for everyone, and an amazing benefit for your campaign. It was fantastic. Your IQ is unmatched.
That's something I've been doing since I was 15 years old.
Right.
For myself and others. But so the reality here is the bureaucracy is the biggest cost. I have to prove in different ways with different people 16 times a year that I am disabled in order to be on the system.
Is that a real number? 15 times a year?
16, yes.
16. Oh my God. Okay.
Yep. Once a month with one social worker, twice a year with another, and then twice a year with a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you've only been at this for 40 years. So, how the heck does that inconvenience is real? I don't understand it.
It's huge. And it's huge in the whole family, especially when you're a child.
Sure.
So this is all to prove that my genetic condition that I was born with and that they recognize I still have hasn't been miraculously cured. It's incurable, but I want to make sure it hasn't been cured.
I want to wrap duct tape around my head right now, because that is a waste of taxpayer money. That is resources that could be devoted to
helping people like me.
I mean, like, get you a new tire for your damn wheelchair. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, this is the absurdity of the government that we have, because we have systemized everything. We no longer answer the needs of the people, and I'm not sure that we ever did. But
so
I've got to say,
I want to go back to the garden.
Yeah, do it.
You and I both smoke tobacco.
Correct.
How much did you pay for yours?
Well, I don't want to tell you where I'm getting my cigarettes, because what I'm actually doing might be a form of tax evasion. Now, I have been lucky enough to spend time in New Hampshire and Pennsylvania, which
okay, if you're to buy a pack of cigarettes in New York, what does it cost you?
It's $15.25 to $17. It's absurd. And all of it is taxation. All of it is taxes. You can buy cigarettes for $7 in Virginia. It's bizarre.
And that tobacco is bastardized and low quality.
Sure.
They add all kinds of chemicals and extra nicotine to it to make sure you smoke more.
Yeah, keep me addicted. I love it. But go ahead.
I grew a year's worth of tobacco for $40.
My God, man, that's crazy.
And it tastes like a fine cigar.
Does it?
Yeah.
I hate cigars. I love cigarettes. No, just go ahead. I'm kidding. Being a smart, being a contrarian there, my normal state.
Right, but if it weren't for a wheelchair that went to the garden, I wouldn't be able to do that, and I'd still be addicted to nicotine.
Right.
And I live on $12,000 a year.
Right.
So, right.
Right.
You see where that goes, right? That's tax avoidance, not tax evasion. It is perfectly legal to grow my own tobacco. Interesting byproduct out of that is that the scrap from the plant can be turned into a pesticide that treats bugs on the whole garden.
I love it. That's agorism, right? Agorism. How do we say agorism? I like agorism as a concept. I think agorists themselves are a faction of the Libertarian Party. They're like amongst the most philosophically pure. Therefore, they are looking to argue with literally everyone. It's just like they're so argumentative. It's amazing.
Yeah, agorism is essentially stepping outside of the systems in any systems when you can to benefit yourself. So if you prefer healthy, good quality food, you raise and grow it yourself, or buy it from someone who does a better job instead of
correct.
If you want quality tobacco, you grow it yourself. Of course, it's illegal to buy it from someone who doesn't have a permit to sell it. So, and you're not going to get it from most tobacco farms in that fashion. But the reality here is the more you can do for yourself, the more self-sufficient you are, the less you cost to a system that you are beholden to. That's why I treat most of my own ailments. Despite my severe condition, I am much less of a burden on the healthcare system than you are, Tim.
Okay. All right, I'll buy that.
Well, my health care in a year costs about $7,000 to the system a year.
That's fantastic. Those are good numbers, right?
And that's partly because I've taken wheelchairs out of that, right? I have wheelchairs for life now. In fact, I think we're up to 1, 2, 3. We have 6 of these Omega Tracks that we're using as test platforms, all donated or purchased by me. One was the crowdfunded chair. Another was one that I put on a credit card at 0% interest. And then another was donated from a gentleman down in Austin, Texas. And then the last 3 that we received were actually donated by the last living original engineer of the Omega Track wheelchair. The Omega Track wheelchair, by the way, was designed by a family of engineers for one of their own members of the family that gained a disability and it didn't like what was on the market.
Right.
They chose to do better. And that company actually went under because they chose to serve people better than the rules required. And they had shareholders. And so the shareholders squeezed out the people who were doing the right thing for profit, right? And that's why we have shareholders and bureaucrats deciding what we need for wheelchairs. And it is unfortunate that in business, doing the right thing can put you under, particularly when you're talking about something like a wheelchair.
Yeah, I'm with you, brother. Holy
This
cow.
isn't a luxury TV. It's not a
Right.
luxury smartphone. It's something people need to live,
Yeah.
and thrive, and survive. The number of people that I run into that had children when they gained their disability and are now struggling to keep them because CPS, right, keeps an eye on the quality of life. And if you don't have an adequate wheelchair, your quality of life goes down.
Yeah, that I think our friends can get their brains around very easily. I
So
think we've done a fantastic job discussing the issues that you're presented with. What I'm wondering is, do we have any anecdotes that we want to share? Do you have anything like to draw people in? I've been posting your links, like follow you on Twitter, follow you on Facebook. You've done a nice job monetizing your Facebook page and having great conversations with people. What else do you want to talk about? What else do you want to share, Tom?
So I've mentioned a couple of times that we're working with universities.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So tech universities have a problem getting their kids to care about what they're doing and to be excited about their collegiate projects. And interestingly, when we talk about this problem with young students, that they're pretty hot on it. They really like the concept. They really understand what it's going to do for people. And when I watched the University of Rochester's presentations, our class had the best presentation I saw. I didn't see them all, but of the handful that I saw, our students were the most enthused, the most accurate, with the best presentation. Why? Because we made them care about what they're doing.
Yeah. Help them to care or open their eyes to it, right?
So
libertarians don't make people do shit, right? We try to open their eyes, and you found that they got passionate about your reality, right?
And the reality for everyone, as we've discussed, right? So that means that we went from thinking we were going to beat our heads against the wall, trying to fund programs, to fund universities to do these projects. And the 4 universities that we have working with us right now have not requested funding because of how good it is for their curriculum, how excited that their students get. I want to talk about the University of Arizona, the Arizona State University, ASU. They're giving us 4 teams of kids to compete with each other to design a children's wheelchair and power wheelchair. And this came out of meeting a nonprofit in Syracuse, New York. They were modifying, like the Barbie Jeeps and all of those little toy cars that kids can ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had been granted a gift of like 80 or 100 of those because the line was dead. They weren't manufacturing them and it was overstocked, right?
Right.
And they're putting joysticks on them like a wheelchair for training purposes. And here's why. The number one qualification for an age 3 to 7-year-old child that needs a power wheelchair to get a power wheelchair is they put them in one and see if they know how to drive it. Tim, did you take your driver's test for a car without ever having driven a car?
Well, fuck yeah, Tom, because that's how I roll, son. But no, I get what you're saying, man. Yeah,
they're addressing the problem that the denial rate for children ages 3 to 7 is exceptionally high. That's because they don't get any training. They don't have any opportunity to know what they're doing. We're taking a small child, right? Think about this, 3 years old. Here, do this thing for the first time and do it perfectly, or else you can't have help.
You see, my brain is gonna fucking explode again, right? Like you see that coming on. I'm just like, this is some serious freaking bullshit. That's
so this
going
nonprofit, right? That they've got like 80 of these that they're turning into a situation where the child can try driving it with a tethered joystick, so they're not in it for the first time, and then an adult supervisor can have that tethered joystick when they're trying the one that's on the chair and they're in the chair to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So that gives the child an interface experience, right? And here's the thing. Over a physical disability, if you don't have access to learn, explore, go bump, touch the grass, right? Smell some dog food, maybe. Those are all learning experiences, and they're very valuable to the young mind. The brain needs those to develop. And so what happens if you don't have access to adequate equipment when you have a physical disability at that age? You sustain a developmental disability. You don't learn and grow cognitively because you're not having the experiences you need.
Yeah. Hey, can you vamp for about 30 seconds? I need to go do something and I'll be right back. Do you mind if I just disappear for a bit and you kind of perhaps talk about your leadership role in the Mobility Independence Foundation? All right, and I'll be right back. All right, brother?
Yeah.
All right, man. Go for it. Let's go.
All right. So at ASU, 4 teams of kids are competing to develop a training wheelchair. I see Tim knocked his camera over. For children. Now, we've put this stipulation on these programs with universities. Whatever tech is developed has to be open source. It has to come back to us so that we can release it and proliferate it. The problem with the initiative, which I love out of that nonprofit in Syracuse, is that they're thinking small. They're doing it for a few people in their specific area, and they're not spreading that through the world. What we can do with this project with the Arizona State is we can take those board designs, we can decide which one's best or modify them, or maybe take some features from each or the other, right? And we can create this low-cost design that just about any nonprofit or even the for-profit providers whose bread and butter is selling wheelchairs can use to train children, which will solve that developmental delay problem. Then we actually get contacted by third world countries an awful lot. They don't have any manufacturing for this equipment in Africa. And, Ghana, Kenya, countries like that in Africa are contacting us. They want help. There are nonprofits that exist that pick up the broken pieces of our equipment, repair them, and ship them over there. But again, remember, it's low quality equipment that breaks down often. So we send this piece of repaired equipment to Africa. Somebody's using it. Within that first 6 months, it's broken, and they don't have what they need to repair it. And this is very similar to what happened with our clothing drive in this country. We have donated so much clothing to go to Africa that there are villages that suffer from mountains of clothing. Some of those shirts are from the 80s still, that are rotting in their community. They're trying to figure out how to deal with it. And we're going to see this happen with wheelchairs too. I mean, a lot more of those parts are repurposable, and they're probably the kind of people like what I grew up with, where if it's usable for anything, it's not garbage. But
right.
It's no longer a wheelchair, right? So in the 25-26 school year, we will be working with Northeastern University in Massachusetts. And that is to design an open source manual wheelchair that we have an eye on being made primarily out of either bicycle parts or parts that a bicycle shop can deal with. Because do you know what Kenya and Ghana have on every street corner?
Bicycle shops.
Right.
I'm a genius. How did I know that?
Well, that's how you solve a problem. And we've actually run into, there's a nonprofit, I think it's in Pennsylvania, that's teaching bicycle shops how to repair manual wheelchairs already.
All right, that's fantastic. I made a couple notes while we were talking. One thing, my kid is an engineering student at Virginia Tech, and this is something that might interest you. I heard echoes of this already. He has joined a club that they call the Concrete Canoe Club. Okay. And so what the Concrete Canoe Club is, it's what they're trying to do is it's fascinating.
Do they make canoes out of concrete?
Correct. Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, it seemed kind of obvious, but yeah, that's what they do. And the interesting aspect of it is that they compete with other schools and other engineering clubs to come up with the best design for the lightest weight concrete canoe that actually manages to stay above water. I find that your goal or your mission here of having an engineering competition for students to design mobility independence units would have a massively broad appeal. I think that there's something there for you to sell. Like, boom, this would be huge. This is going to be huge. I can feel it, Tom. I think it's going to go nationwide. This thing, engineering
There is
schools all over the country.
Well, we already are.
Oh, great!
One of our engineers is in Georgia. Another one is in Massachusetts. One is in Rochester. Our chief of research and design is in Pennsylvania. Our comms director is in Arizona. And we have people all over. We actually have supporters in just about every state that I stop in, and any state that I drive through.
Yeah.
So the reality here is that there is no competition in the market.
Right.
In fact, I can see this. We go to these abilities expos and all the big manufacturers that they are, and they have the biggest booths and they have the most designs on display. And it's kind of interesting. When you go from one of their booths to another of their booths, you see the same stuff. It's just branded differently, which means the patents are only slightly off from each other.
Right.
So, right. I mean, where's the competition?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Where is the competition?
Right. And competition is what moves technology forward. And when technology moves forward, our society moves forward. The interesting thing here is, like, we're a nonprofit, and that sounds like, libertarians for entrepreneurs, and we want to make money, and we believe in, and everybody's right to go forth and do. And here's the thing, right? When you need an electric motor repaired, Tim, what kind of shop do you look for?
Well, an electric motor repair shop.
Right. But if you need an electric motor repaired for your wheelchair, you know what kind of shop you're relegated to? None.
None. Okay.
You're not allowed to. You have to wait on the replacements through the system.
Repairing electronic motor is, for people that do it, is a relatively simple operation. To get a motor that matches your specs for an electronic repair shop, they can do it faster. They could replace that motor for you in 3 days. They could fix it in 2. They could fix it in a day. They have the parts right there. There's nothing unique about the electronic drive motor of your wheelchair. Like, that's amazing that the government has okay, it's not amazing. It's not surprising. The government has screwed that up, and that's a reality.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to open-ended regulations on insurance companies.
Right.
The insurance companies cry, if you don't give us these permissions, we'll go out of business. It's not true. The wheelchair companies cry, if you don't buy our products, we'll go out of business. That's not true. The reality here is that it's market control, and we are fixing the market. And as libertarians, we should understand that fixing a market is a great thing. And my point about the electric motor shops, right?
Yeah.
I had long taken my motors on this chair when they went to the farm store, paid $100, waited a week or less.
Right.
Whereas if I did it through the system, we're talking $5,000 to $15,000, depending on which motor it is, and we're talking at least 6 months wait time. That's terrible. That is
horrible. Yeah.
Whereas I could, spend $100 out of pocket to go get it fixed. Now, here's the thing. If my insurance company, the provider, or the manufacturer had found out that I did that, they would no longer cover any repairs to the entire chair anywhere, not even a new tire.
Wow.
Yep. So how is this encouraging business? Well, a lot of providers and small manufacturers are going private pay because it's so hard to get paid by insurance companies. That's another thing that they've woven into these healthcare laws. It's arduous for the person that does the work or the company that does the work to get paid.
Right.
That does not incentivize them to do better work or to do it more quickly.
I didn't make a comment that I wanted to make when we were talking about peripheral subject to this, that the layers and layers of bureaucracy add layers and layers of expense. As a guy that is involved in contracting with government agencies, with non-government agencies, with that's been involved in contracting for the last 30 years, when you're telling me that I have to come visit you, negotiate with an insurance company, answer questions, try to, all while feeling like I should just be able to fix your wheelchair, you can bet your ass I'm getting paid for that. And that if I don't, I am never helping again. And that is an unfortunate reality, that unless you're a shark and you understand how that system works, you're not even going to participate in it. You're going to be like, this is so absurdly unfair. I don't know what to do. I could go get that guy a tire from Tractor Supply that matches the tire on his wheelchair exactly and fix that thing in 15 minutes. But then I run the risk of him losing his warranty, of him losing his right to access more money that supports his government issued disability. Okay. Like, those things are complicated and terrifying. And as a contractor, I know what the answer is to charge more money. That's the reality. That adds a layer of expense that's absurd.
So I was talking about this being a market correction.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Right. More and more of these companies are going private pay because it's the only way they can survive.
Okay.
They're looking to us. We get approached. We go to these tech expos called Abilities Expos to network with other companies and other nonprofits in the same realm of work. And we have great success networking with them. And that's because we're doing a solution that they can see once it's explained to them helps their cause. Now, when the private pay options are coming to us and saying, hey, we want to use your open source designs, that tells me we're doing the right thing. Right? Those are businesses that are already for profit and they want to use our designs. Now, beyond that, right? How many businesses in your vicinity employ people who can turn a wrench?
Oh, I mean, that's a pretty big, everywhere, right? That's something that's important, to have guys that are skilled with their hands to repair things. It's real.
And to that note, that means that all of these businesses that employ people that can turn a wrench can also work on these wheelchairs.
That would be awesome, right? That would be a great market correction.
Yeah. And in terms of healthcare, I like to say that the over-bureaucratic systems in healthcare have removed the word care from healthcare. But in your community, the people who know you, the people who are your neighbors, the people who see you on the sidewalk, the people whose businesses you frequent, they care about you. You're a human being. You're not a number. You're a face in front of them. You're not a name on a piece of paper. And they care about you.
Yeah.
To that note, it's not very hard to get an auto shop to change my tires.
Fantastic.
It's not very hard to get the fuse I need through an AutoZone.
All right. That's also good news, right?
Right. It's not very difficult to get batteries swapped out by anybody who has some kind of electrical knowledge, but this actually doesn't take much.
No, changing batteries is not. I'm a guy with high level electrical knowledge, like very high level. Like that
explains the curly hair.
Yeah, well, megawatts of high level electrical knowledge, megawatts of installing successful systems. So changing batteries, that's a labor guy job. You know what I mean? Like they can do it. And I'm not to dismiss the value of a man's work, but that's real. It's a relatively simple process.
Right. So this is a skill set that's common in our community already.
Correct. Yes, sir.
We have fabricators that can weld together frames or make specific parts. Those all exist in our community. So that means that everything we need to produce an open source and advanced power wheelchair already exists. already there. All we have to do is get them to work with us, and then we have a competing supply chain,
which will in fact make the government better at its job. Okay, like they will see that they're losing a program. The problem with the government is that what they'll do to compete with you is legislate you out of existence. But I don't know that will happen. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the fear of it.
On that note, I got to ask you if you're aware of a gentleman by the name of Jim Cantrell.
I have not heard that name, Tom.
He was a race car driver.
Okay, I have heard the name. Go ahead.
Now he's a founder of Phantom Aerospace.
Okay.
And he advises our engineers. But he said something to me, actually to a group of us. You're never going to be able to change or improve or get rid of an arduous and bad government program. But what you can do is starve it of the oxygen in the room.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Yeah. All right. That makes perfect sense in context of our conversation.
So in terms of wheelchairs and healthcare, our initiative is to make that a community care situation, a small businesses that care situation, and want to make more money. How badly have our small businesses struggled?
Look, we legislate them out of existence. We regulate them out of existence. We deny their importance during a absurd pandemic. We close them down. We tax them. We regulate them. We change their cost basis at the drop of a hat. Like we're up against another change in the minimum wage, where these things are where people can learn a valuable skill, but at $17 or $16 an hour. So yes, we abuse them. We take their tax money and waste it to micromanage what they can do.
So all of these small businesses, some of them aren't small, but most of them are,
right,
have an avenue to make a little more money by helping people with wheelchairs.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it.
Beyond that, most of our engineers have designs on producing what they're working on, right? So we have a robotics engineer doing the human interface device, which you might call the controller or a joystick. We have an engineer doing the motor controller. And we have a fabrication shop, Rapadapt, doing frames and redesigning the transmission to be easier to manufacture, as well as some other parts. And all of these people either have or want to create a company to build these and sell them. So that's how we increase entrepreneurship, small businesses, basic non-crony capitalism through a humanitarian initiative.
Okay, so you said something about, let's just talk about what that market might look like to a small business. How many wheelchairs get sold through the government per year?
2 million, and there's 5.5 million wheelchair users. But we are not going to limit ourselves to wheelchairs going forward. And there are more wheelchairs to develop because not one size fits all.
Correct.
In fact, I think the hat you're wearing is a one size fits all hat, right? It's adjustable in the back.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, you know those are too small for me.
I've seen the size of your head, brother. I know.
I can't wear a one size fits all hat.
I listen, but when it comes to one size fits all hats, I'm always at the size of my head is also, it's close to yours. It's a little bit smaller, but mine's wildly big as well. So I get what you're saying there.
Right. So there is no such thing as one size fits all.
Correct.
I run into people who are tall and they've been laborers all their lives, and they're getting pushed around in a hospital-style manual wheelchair with no leg rest because there's absolutely nothing on the market that we've made to fit. With an open source design, if you're building it for a particular person, it's open source. You can tweak that design as you build it for any need. Any need.
And let's say if the tweaking that you did, since this is all open source with plenty of options to meet an individual user's needs, if one specific option doesn't work as well as they thought, what's to rework that one piece How hard would that be? That makes it so simple, like this
Yeah.
plug and play, design, build kind of thing. I just absolutely love it. I love it.
And that's the thing. Disability is very wide range,
Sure.
and even just physical disability is a very wide range.
Correct.
And
You know how many people I've met with your precise condition, Tom, my entire life? And I'm 58 years old, and I have met hundreds of thousands of people because I'm outgoing, gregarious, involved in restaurants, doing production in strange towns, meeting people all the time. You know how many people I've met with your precise condition? It's zero. It's a number that approximates zero because it's zero. Like,
Yeah.
your condition is absolutely unique. You should be able to tell someone, me, you, however, what you need for a wheelchair that works. And we should be able to adapt it if your original idea is flawed or imperfect in some way. Like, oh my God, my butt hurts because of that pad you put there. Like, let's get a different size pad. It should just be a swap thing. Boom, done. You know what I mean? Very simple. Should not be a complicated month-long or several month-long process where I have to come interview you, take a survey, get you the parts you want, then realize those parts don't work, then go back and change those parts out. It should not. The way you're describing it right now, if you do that through the government, this is going to take years to get you comfortable in your thing. And if we do it your way, if we do it through the Mobility Independence Foundation, it's going to take days. It's going to take maybe a week. Like, this is an amazing innovation.
So that hits on something else that I've discovered. When we go to these Abilities Expo, there are thousands of people using wheelchairs that attend them, and we get to talk to them. We also talk to other organizations who are trying to talk to them. And I've discovered one thing. There are some organizations that are not by those with disabilities, but they're for those with disabilities. And they're trying to get the same questions and answers from the disabled community. And the interesting thing is, when an ambulatory person tries to get those answers from someone in a wheelchair, the person in the wheelchair is less likely to answer them. Because they expect them to not understand, and typically they won't anyhow.
They're going to try to shorten it and not provide to end that conversation because they know the end result is that person completely not understanding what they're saying.
And it happens to me all the time. So
I've done it to you.
I don't know if you know this, Tim, but I am very physically, obviously disabled. I mean, my feet are upside down.
Yeah, but they move. Look at that. You could definitely operate a pedal on a van or something.
Right?
No.
So because I am very obviously disabled, when I approach and talk to someone in a wheelchair about their problems, they're a lot more comfortable doing it. And I want to share one interesting experience. 4 of us in wheelchairs having a conversation up in the Rochester area and laughing and saying that the systems that serve us through our government are more disabled than we are.
As a libertarian, I anticipate conversations like that. I think normies, Tom, do not understand what you're saying. They expect you to be grateful for their virtue signals that are serving you. And I'm like, no, I could see it. I could see 4 guys in wheelchairs just being like, the government is trying to kill us, man. Like, how do we keep them from trying to kill us? And that conversation being amazing.
And complacency is a problem. We often don't think that we can fight these systems. I learned differently as a small child. I've been fighting insurance companies over the phone since I was like 8. I also had to fight the educational system to be there. You learn these things. But an awful lot of people with disabilities, in particular, people who gain a disability midlife, they think the system that exists is all there is. There's no other option. There's no other way. How dare I ask for more from the biggest, baddest government that is benevolently granting me this piece of equipment that must make my life totally fine? How dare I complain? I know it costs tens of thousands of dollars. How can I complain to my neighbor that paid those tax dollars?
Because your neighbor gives a shit and wants you to be happy and comfortable. But yes, it is a strange conundrum that you're faced with there, correct? Like, yeah, wow. I love how you put your finger on these things and so well. And then arguably what amazes me, Tom, is your ability to stay consistently libertarian and solution oriented. Like that is a real thing. As people are probably aware of, I put your Mobility Independence Foundation, your main page there. You have a segment called Tell Your Story. Do you want to talk about that for a second? Because I think we've been alluding to it, but I want you to point out exactly what goes on there.
Yeah, so that comes out of a very simple concept. I am disabled. I understand my disability extremely well, and I can understand my needs very well.
Right.
I'm a disabilities advocate for 26 years, and so I have a lot of vicarious angles to understand more disability.
Mhm.
However, I haven't lived them all. I'm not Tim O'Connor. I don't know what Tim O'Connor needs.
Correct.
So that's a survey for equipment users and those adjacent equipment users, maybe a parent or a caregiver, could be a niece. We get a lot of PTs and OTs. And that's where you can answer a few questions. And whenever I ask someone to take the survey, I tell them, if the question doesn't hit an issue that you want to talk about, just talk about it.
Write it down. Right?
Yep. And you get through all those questions and you hit the consent at the end. And then we have that to market. Some of it goes in our documentary. And yes, you could be in a documentary that ends up potentially on Netflix if you take that survey.
Did that? Okay. Let me reshare. I try to sometimes these links don't work exactly the way we want to. Let me stop the screen share, then I'm going to start it again because I just went into the actual tell your story part where perhaps we can expand on this even further, if you will.
Sure.
This is fun. This website that you developed here is kind of fun, very interesting. I like what you're doing. And so here's that next webpage. When you push the link, okay, Boomer, take it easy. You'll be able to explain it. Slow down. When you push the link to tell your story, you get taken to here. And so here's our next piece. Let's navigate through this a little bit. All right. I see
I'm going to get some more of that tax-free tobacco.
All right, do that. I see the wrecked wheelchair there. There's got to be a story there about that.
The stock image.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of going through that page and trying to figure out how to navigate it. But I'm going to say that even I could navigate this page, so that's actually a pretty good sign.
And if you see us at an event, we have iPads that have cameras built in. You're right there on the iPad. You can do this on your iPhone, your computer, your tablet. Off.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I think that this lends itself to the notion that a plug and play system of a platform that has, what I would think of as a certain amount of horsepower to move people around, that is readily adaptable with multiple additions or subtractions from the basic platform, like an AR, if you will, Tom. You know what I mean? Like if you want an AR that shoots kind of over a distance, you have a scope that you can add to it. If you decide to change your mind and you want to go back to open sights, you can do that. If you want to customize the grips, that's something that's readily available. I think that's kind of what you're doing with this whole wheelchair thing, right?
I think it's interesting that you brought up guns just now because for a few years in the last 10 to 15 years, the Consumer Most Dangerous Products list has listed wheelchairs in the top 30 most dangerous consumer products.
All right.
Well, when your wheelchair breaks down and you're doing something, you probably get hurt. I know I do.
That makes sense. Didn't you just have your leg broken by Amtrak?
Yeah. Amtrak staff dumped me out of my wheelchair. That's a long story I don't want to get into.
Okay, fine. I'm sorry.
I've got a lawsuit for that. Let's let them handle it.
Okay.
So, interestingly, you know what didn't make that top 30 list?
AR-15s.
Guns in general.
Okay.
Did not make that list.
Really?
But wheelchairs did. Our wheelchairs are more dangerous than our guns. What is all of the messaging about today?
Well, emotional attachment to people who commit violence and use guns to do so. That's and the potential that democracy can limit your rights to defend yourself because people are afraid, but they're not dealing with the real issue. They're dealing with a
Ancillary.
ancillary issue. I don't want to minimize the impact of people who have experienced traumatic problems. But
Wait. Gun violence is bad. Violence
Correct.
is bad. Libertarians, if they're actually being libertarian, are anti-violence.
Correct.
Except in self-defense.
Correct.
Interestingly, the wheelchair industry has dictated that you cannot run away because it won't go fast enough.
Correct.
And isn't designed to be leaving the home. So if you're in a home invasion, you can't get away. It's ridiculous. I mean, the first right to self-defense is actually exiting the situation. And yet, in the great benevolence of those who are vulnerable, we have decided that they should not be able to get away.
We have done some weird stuff that centralizes power to the government and does not serve the people. Right. And I think
let's get down to the point of this survey.
Yeah.
This survey exists so that we can hear from the end users. And the reason that I am the president and founder is because it came out of my situation. And that means I get to be reluctantly the face of this organization. I have to be the one that travels. I have to be the one that takes risks in my situation because nobody else is going to listen to an ambulatory person about this. They're just not.
Nor in a way should they, unless that it's a care provider, right? Like I think that's
even care providers don't know what we know.
I agree with that premise for sure. But
you see that guy on the left, Mark?
Yes.
He is a victim of the Boston Marathon bombing.
Okay. Can I just play this? Let's see if that works.
I think so.
Here we go.
I wish people knew that it's not easy. It's worrisome. You don't find yourself going places because you worry about your equipment working or not working. So, I just wish people knew that it's really not convenient, especially like handicapped and wheelchair parking. And if people that don't need it park there, it's kind of really difficult too. So I just wish people knew that it's not always convenient being in a wheelchair.
I can intuitively get my head around that. Should we listen to a couple more that you've got there?
The one on the right, Jessica.
Okay.
I know Jessica.
All right, let's do that one.
That most good equipment is completely unaffordable, and the affordable equipment often is still very limited and limiting.
Right.
What a good point.
That the equipment that she can get is limited. And what this equipment is intended to do is to remove those limitations. It's a replacement for your legs, Tim. I mean, if I was a benevolent government program and you lost your legs and I said, here, have some toothpicks, how would you feel?
It's so illustrative, but so absurd that I don't even want to answer the question. How's that? You know what I mean? This is like, holy shit. Well done, sir. Well done.
This comes down to false promises, right? These systems promise to give you solutions that fix your situation. And what they deliver is equipment that is shoddy and not repairable. And for the economists out there, most of this equipment is manufactured in China.
Yeah, well, that's because they're the king of manufacturing right now for lots and lots of reasons. And also, I just want to reiterate, free trade is anti-war. Mm-hmm. People get disabled in war. And like, just relax, everybody. Just calm down. Free trade is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
It makes everybody's lives better.
I like the fact that a Chinese guy makes my beer can. Like, I love that. Like, as an example, that plenty of the things that I own are manufactured in China. Probably even the mic that I'm talking on right now is manufactured. I love that. I know that there's human rights issues with the way they work labor in China, but that won't be solved by denying free trade.
Right.
That could be solved other ways.
Yeah, the point that I'm getting at is that they're manufactured in China because there are less arduous rules and regulations causing the expense to go up in China.
Right.
Here, labor laws and the whole 9 yards, not all of them are bad, but some of them dramatically increase the cost of producing goods. And that's
Absolutely. Bring back child labor, Queeter. We could get stuff made for free. Just kidding. Doing my LPNH imitation right there.
Yeah. Or you can at least teach them how to work the garden and grow food together. That was a great experience for me.
Yes, there is a persuasive argument to allow a little bit less restrictions on children working and entering the workforce for lower rates of pay.
Or just working with the family unit for no pay. In other cultures,
correct, yes,
world, they have better parenting practices because they have to work together to survive. So the kids follow their parents around, automatically want to do what their parents are doing: food production, cooking, cleaning, everything. It starts there. It did for me.
Yeah.
I have the mindset that if they didn't include me in working in the garden, despite my inability to walk, I was going to go do something else and get in more trouble. So I learned to garden, right, and butcher, and everything that the family did to survive. So what does this mean? That means that inclusion, right, is the biggest factor in our development and our ability to thrive. I was fortunate enough to be in a small town, right, where inclusion was automatic because they knew me. Right? I remember the Mount Upton General Market down the road. It's no longer there. It just got knocked down the last couple of years.
Thanks to COVID, probably.
Right.
But go ahead, carry on.
They voluntarily became illegally accessible.
All right, gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah.
So at that time, the way the ADA worked was if you made any modification, you had to make all of the accessible modifications, and that became cost prohibitive for a lot of businesses. And so they would not do renovations, or at least not do renovations of the books, so that they didn't have to do everything that they couldn't afford and survive through. This gentleman knew my parents, and his name was Leonard. Shout out to Leonard. I believe you can still occasionally spot him in the Price Chopper in Norwich. But he had a dolly ramp. You know what a dolly ramp is, right? It's like a 45-degree angle ramp that they use to truck in the goods when a delivery is made.
Yes.
Well, that dolly ramp picked up and put down, but it was too steep.
Mm-hmm.
So he built one that was less steep.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could get in the store.
And frankly, Tom, he's lucky he didn't get sued out of existence for that violation. Like that he was inevitably going to get destroyed by the government is a fact of life now. You and I have talked about the ADA and what an absurd piece of legislation it is, and how it encourages trial lawyers to go around and shake down small businesses for payoffs. Okay, that's all it can be described as. It's absurd what they do. Anyway, again, we got to a brain exploding kind of situation for me.
Right. So in terms of the ADA, right, we're in the Northeast.
Yes.
You know the ground freezes, that just heave and thaw. And you know what that does to our parking lots?
Yeah, messes
Every last one of them is an ADA violation.
Oh, of course they are. Right.
And almost annually, right? As soon as they repave the next year, there's something.
Yes.
Technically, a fair share of them could be sued almost every year. We could sue them into repaving and paying out until we have a lot of perfectly accessible empty buildings for maybe a year.
What will really happen is what is happening all over upstate New York now. Go ahead.
So the simpler approach to that is to make equipment that can go over these things.
I love it. How your wheelchair can handle stuff like that.
Yes, it can. I was in Austin, Texas, and they have flash flooding issues. So you occasionally come across a parking lot that got this pothole the size of a car, It's all broken up. I drove through them.
Oh, nice.
I can drive up to 6-inch curbs. I prefer not to.
Right.
I can go through most potholes. I can drive over down to trees in the hills of the Catskill Mountains. I can survive traversing the sidewalks of New York City.
That's I can't even do that, brother.
But there was actually a news bit where people were falling down and getting hurt because the city came through for the sidewalk, liability for maintenance and injury on the landowner, right? And then the city came through and put trees in, and the roots grew, and there was this 4-inch bump that people were tripping over, falling down, getting taken away in ambulances. It took a 9-year battle to land that liability on the city instead of the property owner. Now, here's the thing. I saw this bit. It's like, I know that sidewalk. In 22, I spent 3 weeks petitioning for statewide campaigns in New York City. I had gone over that bump without an issue.
That's amazing.
But healthy ambulatory people were getting harmed. So now this is what technology should be doing in this realm. With today's level of technology and advancement and what's available on the market, my wheelchair should make me more safe and more travelable than you are.
That's fantastic. That's another thing. One of the important things about talking to you regularly is that you bring home certain ideas that function in the libertarian realm that are absolutely amazing, and it's where we can either compete with government or we can make government obsolete. And I think that's what we want to do. I think that's one of our goals, where we argue over whether our presidential candidate was good enough. We argue over whether or not we should endorse big government in the hopes of getting a libertarian in the cabinet, when in fact, we could work with a guy like Queter, give him some money, and help him get people parts for wheelchairs that work.
I do want to stipulate, you're not giving me money. You're giving the foundation money. I do not get paid for what I do. I get a broken leg for what I do.
Well, that's bullshit. All right, you should get fucking paid, bud. Like, what the hell? Like,
Not
you're adding fucking value. You should get paid, son. Earn. You got to earn.
The laws about nonprofits are that those on the board cannot profit from the nonprofit. I do get to travel. I do get to meet new people.
Awesome.
I do get to expand my horizons. I've crossed the Mississippi 10 times in the last 2 years.
That's wonderful. That is fantastic. You're a good advocate for your cause, and I think this is great. And a great opportunity for you.
Right. And to be perfectly honest, the opportunity for me in there is that when the foundation gets to the point where it's regularly well funded every year, I can drop my role on the board and become executive director and get paid. And the systems of welfare do not allow me that option any other way.
Okay. So what we're going to do is help you build this. Like, that's what we're going to do. Guys, as you know, I've mentioned it several times on my X page. I've mentioned it on Facebook that I am a supporter of the Mobility Independence Foundation, that I believe in its cause, that I wish that I won the lotto, because this is something that I would take a lot of money and put into a competing alternative to what the government offers for people that can then accept the risk of what we're participating in and have literally a better life. I've seen Queter's wheelchair. I've seen it in action. We get it in and out of tight places that people with those wheelchairs, those government issued, insurance paid for wheelchairs cannot maneuver. They can't do it. Your wheelchair is amazing. You're amazing. This is an important conversation, and I want to, once again, thank you for having it with me. Like, this is absolutely real.
I would like to reiterate one last thing. People often think that I'm doing this for me. The reality is that I've got wheelchairs for life and people to support me for maintaining them for life. I don't have to do this for me. I can live happily in the garden for the rest of my life without any issues. But I've spent too much time advocating for people who die waiting for wheelchairs, who decline in health because of poor wheelchairs. And it's not in me to take that solution and keep it to myself. it's in me to try and proliferate that across the board in society. And that doesn't mean just Mount Upton. That doesn't mean just New York State. That doesn't even mean just the United States of America. It's good for everybody everywhere who is dealing with a physical disability and needs equipment. And to reiterate this point again, if you are not fortunate enough to die suddenly, and I hate to say it that way, fortunate enough to die, right? Suddenly, you will be dependent upon equipment for months or years of your life, sometimes decades, right? It is much more applicable to provide better equipment than to provide cures for certain things. Some things just can't be cured.
Right. Right.
So it's for you too, Tim.
I accept that there is a certain reality that I may not be one of the lucky ones to die quickly.
And, you know, for the young people out there, you don't know if your child's going to have a physical disability or not if you haven't already had them. So it's for the new people being born with disabilities. It's for the people who gain a disability on the job site and want to be able to go back to work. It's for the people in their old age. You know, they've worked hard all their lives, all of their lives, sometimes building a business, and they gain disability, and all of a sudden they can't enter their own business. They can't keep up with their own operations, or they can't enjoy their golden years. We hear that all the time, right? You should be able to travel. You'll see your kids that have moved away, especially if you live in New York.
They all move away. Tom, I have three kids, as you know. Two of my kids are gone. They're gone from New York already. If my middle child stays, it's because she's awesome. But she wants to be a psychologist and a counselor, and that New York State is actually, it has a pretty good industry there. You know what I mean? So, but my other two kids are gone. They're not coming back. New York State is a mess.
Yep. A lot of people are leaving. And they have been. I mean, we lost a congressional seat over our population decline.
Yes.
So this isn't a just for the cripples organization. This is a for everyone organization, because if you have a disabled child, giving your child better equipment makes your lives easier and better.
Right.
I know that from watching my own parents growing up. I mean, it was a struggle. Doctor's appointments, when the wheelchair broke down, somebody had to stay home. And it was a lifestyle where we needed two working parents.
Right.
This situation is one of those sideline attacks in the family unit that we don't hear about.
Right.
It's stressful for the parent. It's stressful for the loved ones. It's stressful for the caregivers. It's stressful for the individual who's dealing with their own disability. But we can fix an awful lot of that stress.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, arguably, I think what you're doing just presents this massive opportunity for people to. Every libertarian I know talks about, like, well, what we've got to do is craft solutions, Tom. Like, what we've got to do is create solutions. What we've got to do is be active in solutions. What we've got to do is serve on our local town board. What we've got to do is we've got to do something. What we have to do is give money to ideas that frickin' work. Okay. That's the heart of volunteerism. I know the government screws us. All right. I know that we're tight on taxes. I know that our time and our labor and our intellect is being devalued, that technological advancement is not dropping off into our pockets like it was supposed to, like it used to during the 70s and the 80s. Okay. I know those things are real. I know budgets are tight. I know we have kids in college. I know that we're trying to grow lives. I know all of those things. I understand them. I face those problems as well. I will donate money to this foundation. Bottom line, absolutely real. I'm doing it. I've done it, and I'm going to do it again. Period. It's the real thing, Tom. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you know what's better than donating $100 at a clip?
Donating $10,000 at a clip?
Well, yes, But if you donate $10 a month, that's $120 a year.
You can almost borrow money off of revenue streams like that, right?
Kind of, yeah.
All right, that would be awesome. All right, so guys, that's awesome. Did you hear that? $10 a month. That's $120 a year. That provides the Mobility Independence Foundation with a revenue stream that means something. Do that or else. Do it. Just do it right now.
And how many trips to Dunkin' Donuts can you pay for with $10?
Well, when I go to Dunkin' Donuts, I get a hot medium caramel macchiato, and $10 is all I have to do is skip 2 of those, and I can afford $10 a month. So I think I'm going to donate 100, and then I'm going to think about signing up for another $10 a month. You know what I mean? Like, I think, and I'm not kidding where I'm saying, like, this is not a joke. Like, I wish that I had more money to actively participate in this situation, but there is a potential here. Like, if I give 10, there's 120 people watching this right now. If 10 of them give 10, like, we're all of a sudden now we're at $40 a month, $500 a year. We get a real number to you. If you can donate more, that's huge. You're not greedy. We're not being greedy here. We're not the Jerry Lewis telethon kind of thing, or all of those things are scams. Okay, like, not that they started out that way, but that's where they got to. They got infested with parasites. This agency is doing direct action, and it's not infested with parasites. It has volunteers all over the country. Almost none of them are making money. Your big expenses are getting you to meet other people, right? Like, let's talk about that.
We do actually have some contractors on the books.
You should, right?
Yeah,
because
we have our chief growth officer, which has a lot of experience with growing organizations, and is a Navy veteran who used to work on the electronics of Black Hawk helicopters.
Cool. Very cool.
Yes, I love traveling with him because if I have an electrical issue, I know I can get it fixed real quick.
Absolutely. You'd be like, all right, well, give me a second.
We did that on the last trip, actually.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, that's great.
So then we have a robotics engineer that we contract with monthly, and they're developing the HID. We have an outreach professional who is disabled and heavily linked to all of the other organizations in the country, contracted for work. We do have overhead expenses of travel, and it costs money to be at an expo, right? You have to buy the booth, and
right.
you need your materials to show. You need your equipment to show the videos or the surveys. It costs money, and having those monthly donations is so important because that gives us a better budgeting factor for our overhead. And if you're economically minded and you're a libertarian, you're understanding what I'm talking about. The big grants that we get, and we do get some sizable grants. The biggest one was 6 figures this year.
Fantastic.
Those are great for going forward with our projects.
Right.
They're not so great for going forward with our daily operations. And I don't get paid for this. I do reap the benefit of travel, but I until that one big grant, I was the biggest funder of this organization. I still put every last dime I have into it. Unless we're courting someone for a large amount of assistance, I buy my own food out of the grocery store on the road.
Yeah.
And that's because technically, right, the money for the foundation could cover my food and everything I need on the road.
Right.
But I have the means to cover my own food, and so I do, because I want the initiative to move forward. I started this organization with, I think it was somewhere around $20,000 on 0% interest credit cards, and was able to pay that off before I paid any interest. So the libertarians out there will love that.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic, brother.
And this year we raised in total over $250,000.
Wow. So guys, what that should say to you is that this has real traction, that this is working, that what Queter is doing is working. That's why I love checking in with you every couple of months, brother. You always come back with some amazing realities. Like you're like the Maj Tour of the disability industry. Like you're there crafting solutions and talking to people and getting things to a state where you can literally help real people in real situations. Like,
Right, and we were talking about libertarians arguing earlier, right?
oh my
And
God,
and I
yes.
think they argue about finding solutions, and then all they do is quote dead people and post memes.
Which I do regularly, by the way.
Well, yeah, but you also work.
That's true.
And you host this show.
That is also true. And guys, I do. Let's talk about me for a second, Tom, because
it's all about me.
It is all about me. I do want to talk about why I am dedicated to this concept of libertarianism and where I see flaws in this governing structure that we deal with. Like where I'm saying, I want people to understand that a guy like me does not want to be protected from a dude in China making me a product that makes my life better. Okay. Like I want that guy and I to trade in and out of Bitcoin to buy, like him to buy something from me to buy something from him, for me to believe in the fact that globalism in the sense of free trade is what I want, not a global centralized government. Okay. I'm a guy that
you want free market capitalism, not crony capitalism.
Correct. Right. I want that.
Right. And our initiative frees this market.
Correct. Those are things that are absolutely beautiful about the potential that we have in this world that the internet, be it a CIA op or not, has given us. Okay. Like, I don't care. This is great.
Let me finish that thought though, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
We are a market correction. That is the goal.
I love market. I love the term. As an economics guy, I love the term market correction. Please carry on.
Right. We were talking about libertarians arguing with each other and doing things, right?
Doing nothing but arguing with each other, by the way.
Right.
Okay, let's be real about that.
Right. And so what I like to tell people, and I've been doing this for years, and I know you've heard me say this before, whatever you're doing and wherever your knowledge base is, do the thing that's in front of you, that's the thing to do.
Yes, correct. Yeah, correct.
That's how you find a solution.
Yes.
And what's the title of this show?
It's a free solution.
And do you know what an open source design is?
Say that again.
Do you know what an open source hardware design is?
I do. Now I do. I mean, I kind of had an idea. Yeah, it's a free solution for people with a problem. And that is what libertarians should be about. Like, we waste a lot of time lecturing other libertarians about how to be better libertarians when in fact we could just go to our local town board meetings and lecture them about how your zoning laws are creating homeless people, about you don't want BlackRock in your communities, but you just wrote a law that is going to encourage a property shortage that is going to encourage BlackRock to come in and make massive profits. Like, stop treating your neighbors like that. Let them do things that don't hurt other neighbors, even if you don't really like it, even if it doesn't really make you happy. You just wrote or helped rewrite a property law for the town of Guilford.
Yeah, well, it's in the process. So here's what happened with that. I watch my town board because that's the local level and that's what has the greatest effect on you as an individual, as your lowest level of government. I am fortunate enough to live in a town where they don't do a whole lot, and that's probably a good thing, right?
That's a wonderful thing.
And they released some survey, 250 people, that's a huge number, responded to the survey.
Well, in the town of Guilford, that's everyone, nearly 100%.
There's 2,800 people in this town as far as
I was just being obnoxious, brother.
Right.
Carry on.
So then, under the guise of home rule, they had the nerve to call this home rule. They wrote a junk law for the storage of junk on your property, right?
Right.
Well, they call it home rule. What they did was exactly copy the New York State junk law. And the New York State junk law is made wide open so that counties and municipalities can focus their own laws within that on the problems that actually exist, right? So like cigarette butts are in there, but that's because of places like New York City.
Right.
Guilford is not New York City.
Right.
So the law they wrote was so wide open that as soon as it passed, almost every property in town, in the township, would be in violation.
Of course. Like, look, I'm going to go to my Marxist liberal roots here. There is no reason to punish people for storing their savings on their front lawn.
Yep.
We need to be better human beings about that. Like, you may not like the way it looks, but what that person is doing is saving resources for a future problem, not unlike the wheelchair situation that you and I are discussing tonight. Stop being douchebags. You douchebags.
Interestingly, maybe 6 or 8 years ago, my wheelchairs would have put this property in violation because I had wheelchairs that I got for parts.
Of course. Like, that's literally the problem. Stop punishing poor people for actually having a savings account where they can resiliently deal with problems that come up because they have an extra junk car that starts. Like, let's stop doing that shit.
So it took me years, and until I found the resources that I have now, but we created 2 working wheelchairs out of that.
That's fit. See, but it was there, and if you had to source them at the moment of the problem, you would have been screwed and waiting for months. Like, stop. Realize, politicians, that what you're doing to make your communities beautiful is you're turning into an HOA and you're being absurd. Stop doing shit like that. The world will be a better place. Period.
So this was very easy to do, Tim.
All right.
I wrote a letter to the editor only on a newspaper, the Daily Star. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was in there.
I did.
Talking about the problems with it, and in a very critically libertarian way. I was very critical of the law, right? Because that was the phase that I was at. I read the law, I saw how bad it was, and I criticized it, and I stated that our town supervisor should be capable of leading to amendments to make the law better. Because I know they're going to pass something no matter what.
Because once something gets there, it's
right. So it's better to, in this case, amend it so it's less egregious and less harmful to the people.
Sure.
So I did that, and I whipped in a Facebook group for the town, right? And I get to the meeting. Actually, I was on my way back from Dallas. I skipped 2 business meetings up in the Rochester area and slept overnight in a Western New York rest stop, which is very cold, by the way.
Good for you, bud. Good for you.
To make that meeting. And I get there, fantastic. Right? I get there, and of course, being me, I get there early, and they do this number. You pick up a card with a number on it, and that's the order in which you speak. I, of course, got number 1 because I'm early.
Right.
And I spoke my piece. And as it turns out, the room packed full in the town of Guilford, which is unusual. It's very unusual. And you can tell by the looks on the faces of the people that are on the board, they were a little, queasy in the gut because they didn't know what was going to happen.
They were a bit surprised. They were a bit surprised. Yeah.
And everybody there that spoke had an issue that was in my letter to the editor.
Fantastic.
And not a single person showed up to speak in favor of it. And those who spoke in favor of it online when I was whipping against it saw Guilford junk law and thought that's all it was, right? They thought it's a reasonable situation in their minds was what it would address. They didn't actually read the law. They didn't actually understand the law. They didn't understand that liens meant they were going to steal property. They didn't understand that 15 days in jail for a cigarette butt on your law was too far. They didn't understand that the requirement of the code enforcer to follow up on every single anonymous complaint would mean that he's following up on BS complaints instead of actually addressing the actual issue. Now, if we whittle this law down to the specific issues that are actually a problem in some people's perceptions, and we make accounts for, it costs money to keep people in jail for 15 days. It costs money to run the court system. It costs money for that enforcement officer, right? we want the best value for our expenditures, right?
Sure.
So if we look at this as cutting out the bureaucratic waste of that situation, and we look at this as giving people more reasonable freedom under this law, there it is. Now, all I was intent to do at first was write that letter to the editor, show up at the meeting, say my piece, and that would be that, right? I'm busy. I put in 80 to 120 hours a week for this foundation. I don't need these headaches. However, the very next day, a town board member that I worked with on the cannabis legislation a couple of years ago reached out to me and wanted me to propose a better law.
Oh, that's fantastic, though.
And then a few days after that, the town supervisor, reached out to me and wants to have a meeting. We're having it on December 30th at 11 a.m. by which I will have a edited version of that law to be more amenable to both the people and the problems. Right?
Amenable to the people and the problems. All right, that's good.
Actually, home rule.
Yeah, right. Article 9 of the New York State Constitution allows for home rule, that your local laws supersede the laws handed to you by the government. We do not avail ourselves. The government actively countermands it and finds workarounds and links funding to it to minimize its impact. They're just like, well, yeah, you can do that, but we're going to withdraw all of your funding if you actually do that. You know what I mean? Like, but
So-
great point. Carry on, sir. Sorry.
No, this is more of a revenue generating law than it looks.
You're right.
Um,
It empowers petty tyrants, Tom, like those psychopath dog catchers that we all know about, or the psychopath building inspectors that we all have heard horror stories about, that find these petty government jobs just to as an extension of their personality, be miserable to their neighbors and exert power over them.
Yep. So we only recently added a code enforcer to the town's payroll for afternoons and weekends. The major reason for that was the number of dilapidated buildings that are potentially a hazard. I mean, if your teenager's running around and having fun and sees an abandoned building and goes in and it collapses, that's probably not good.
That is probably not good. Granted.
They also tend to bring in rats and things like that, right? And
Sure.
Then if they really fall down and they're close to the road, that can cause a problem. And there are legitimate problems with dilapidated buildings.
Absolutely.
And that was the purpose for hiring this gentleman, who is also the code enforcer for the county.
Oh, well, so he's the petty tyrant that I'm talking about. He was probably
and
carry on.
He's also the code enforcer for another town in the county.
Okay.
At least one that I found.
Okay.
So does that sound like a conflict of interest to you, whether it's legal or not?
What he has is a skill set, Tom, and what I found throughout in Otsego County, we have code enforcement officers that are qualified to be code enforcement officers or have taken some requisite classes, who serve multiple townships, who serve the county all at the same time. Now, they have generally not been psychopaths, but we've had dog enforcement officers who are legitimate psychopaths. All right, so where they'll roll up on a party where everybody has a dog and everybody's hanging out, having a cookout and stuff like that. They will entice dogs into their car, take them to the pound, lock them up, and generate revenue for the township. On a level that I can only call insane. So we have to guard against the fact that these jobs can attract petty tyrants and narcissistic psychopaths.
So on that note, I give you one guess. Who wrote this proposed law?
A petty tyrant, narcissistic psychopath. That would be my guess.
The same code enforcer.
Amazingly enough. You guys should guard against that guy, because his personality is what he gets to exert with what he's doing, right?
Sure.
Like that's those people are dangerous. They should be kept far away from power. He'll probably eventually be president of the United States.
He's getting close to retirement. This is also a jobs program.
Right. Well said.
Well, I mean, towns that have gone on forever without code enforcers suddenly need one, apparently.
Correct. Yeah, apparently. To meet the requirements of funding being offered by the government.
So the funny thing about this law is that a significant chunk of it does not apply to the majority of Guilford simply because it is agriculturally zoned.
That's a good way. Get it all agriculturally zoned and tell that guy to go right.
I would say probably 70 to 90% of this town is agriculturally zoned.
Well, that is a unique pushback against petty tyranny. That to get your property agriculturally zoned,
The county already did it. The county already did it.
That's
right?
great. Yeah,
that's a funding initiative, right? That's an incentivization. Save our farms. You remember that for the last 40 years?
yes, yes. So
That's where that comes from, right?
I came up with a question. So, like 20% of the population in Guilford, of the property owners in Guilford, would be subject to this petty tyrant running around and saying, "Your lawnmower that's broken in the back of you've got to get rid of it, or you're going to jail."
And here's the other funny thing about this law: the biggest supporters of it are landlords. And what landlords don't realize is that those fines aren't going to come down on their tenants. They're going to come down on the property owner. And tenants,
I know.
There's like a poverty issue, and if you're running a more than one domicile tenant situation, you're going to have some junk going around. And the reality is that these landlords seem to think that it's going to help them, and it's not. It's going to hurt them.
It's not going to help them. It's man, that's weird. Like they haven't thought that through. I can tell them as a former landlord. Yeah.
Right?
I can tell them as a former landlord, as a guy that had a rental property, that what is the end result of this program is that they are the ones that are going to be fined, that they are the ones that are going to be made responsible for tenants. And look, this is something that creates more homelessness, that landlords are disproportionately responsible for the behavior of their tenants. So what they do is say, fuck you, I'm not renting it out anymore, and I'll let it fall into the ground, or I'll sell it to someone who does not give a shit. Okay.
And then we have more dilapidated buildings, which is the original reason this code enforcer was hired.
We create this definitive downward spiral with stupid laws. It's obvious in upstate New York that we have written stupid laws that cause people to leave, that punish middle class landlords, young people that can afford to rent out half of their house, refuse to do it because of all of these absurd laws that make, like, they get treated like they're BlackRock, right? Like they get treated absurdly bad. They write laws in this general notion that makes no sense, that drives them out of the business. Sorry, another one of my.
What I can do in this situation that apparently the town board can't is pull in policy experts.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
I'm drawing on my old team from 2020, believe it or not. Some of them are from New York City, and they're libertarians. You know what libertarians in New York City say when they see this law in Guilford? This is some New York City bullshit.
This is new. Haven't you and I covered this subject in other podcasts that we've done, where it's just like, why is Guilford, New York, trying to imitate New York City? Why is Milford, New York, trying to imitate New York City?
There's a couple reasons.
There is no reason. I get it.
There's a couple reasons for how it happens. New York City has a big power on Albany, right? What New York City wants, Albany gives them, and that usually ends up statewide.
Right.
That's one reason, right?
Right.
And this is political power, not the people.
Correct. Political power. Tammany Hall, Tom, as you know, you're a historian, as like I am. Tammany Hall never went away. It just hides itself better. It's still there. They're still doing kind of the same thing. It still exists.
Yeah. So the other thing is,
go ahead.
Since 9/11 and now with the pandemic, we have more and more people leaving New York City.
Sure.
And they are generationally New York City people. And so their mindsets are in this heavy regulatory burden system, and they're okay with it. And they come up here And now they want some of those laws here. They don't understand the problem because they've lived in it so long. It's the frog in boiling water, right? You turn up the heat up slowly and they don't feel it.
Let's talk about what a regulation in New York City is like. Okay, there's so many people that if people want to contravene that regulation and keep their property clean and hide the fact that they're contravening that regulation, it's a very simple thing to do. Okay, it's like speeding in New York City or having an unexpected car in New York City. The odds of you actually getting caught are substantially lower than what happens in upstate New York. So we write these laws that apply to everyone in upstate that mirror a law in New York City that has had marginal beneficial effects in New York City, because people who want to contravene those regulations and laws can get away with it. But here you get a little tiny petty tyrant like the guy that you're talking about, and everyone gets punished by it. It's not the same situation. Those laws are horseshit. They should not be brought here. They punish poor people. And guys, one of my things of becoming a libertarian was like, I don't like seeing poor people getting punished by the government. And the only solution to that is less government, not more government, because government always punishes poor people because they can't even fight back. And then middle-class people get the virtue signal and be like, see, we fixed that shit. It's just absurd. Yeah. I'm kind of a communist when it comes to like, stop the government from punishing poor people. Stop it. Stop it.
The anti-camping laws going around municipalities in this country they're anti-homeless people laws. They're send them out of the city laws. They're lock them up laws. They're force them to die laws.
Yes. But the problem is, Tom, before that, the problem starts before that, in my opinion, right? What we're talking about there is when the government has created this incentivized law structure that A, funds homelessness, B, punishes middle-class landlords, C, does not allow renting of your domicile to somebody who I would rent my house to. I have open bedrooms. My kids are gone, right? But I am not going to run the risk of getting some psychopath stuck in a bedroom upstairs who is going to give me shit every day that I cannot get rid of, because that is a risk that I will not take at 58 years old. Okay, I won't take it. And that is based on the law structure in New York State. I won't do it. You guys are nuts. Fix that shit. Let me be able to call the sheriff and get rid of a psychopath, and then I'll have room for someone that's not a psychopath, because you guys helped me. That is going to do more to fix the homeless problem than every anti-eviction law that you are going to write. Period.
Yep.
Do that.
And you know, there's another thing here, back to the landlord situation, right? If their tenants are making the kind of mess that would get them violated under this law, as we asserted, you know, those penalties would come down on the landlord, up to 15 days in jail, by the way.
Jail them because they're too stupid to support the law that it's going to hurt them. They're just kidding. Right. Guys, wake up. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So, in terms of getting rid of a bad tenant, that's not just someone who rents from you. That could be someone that you allow to live on your couch for a month while they get on their feet. That could be a relationship that turns sour. You know, you get a boyfriend or girlfriend.
Correct.
You know, that could be a divorce situation even. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know what you can't do about a bad tenant? Call the sheriff and have them removed.
I know. It's absurd, man.
But do you know what you can do with a property owner in violation of this law? Call the sheriff and have them removed.
It's absurd. It's an absurdity. Like, we're in a lot of trouble, Tom. You know this. What I love about what you're doing, and look, we're coming up on 3 hours. I've had a blast. Let's give a couple more shout outs to what your this is important. But
I'm taking human action.
You are. What you need is support, and that support looks like money. And so I'm going to post the links one more time. We're going to go through how to make a donation. And then, bro, we've got to call it a night, because, like, we've hit a record number of attendees to a Free Solution podcast on Twitter, which is fantastic. I know that's because of your absolute handsomeness and charisma, and the fact that you are solving problems like a libertarian should. Okay. Like that's real. So again, I will personally donate. I want other people to come up with a few dollars. I want people to make that monthly donation. You give your spiel. I'm going to start posting links so people can find you. What do you got, Tom?
So this is an initiative that actually make everyone's lives better. Because if we remove some of the burden from the system, then we remove some of the justification for your tax dollars. If we remove some of the burdens from the families of people with disabilities, then they have more ability to go forth and pursue happiness. If we remove some of these burdens from those with disabilities, then they can go forward, potentially get off of welfare, which has been my dream for 23 years now, and do better for themselves, right? This is a win-win situation, right? The best way to include those with disabilities is to endow them with what they need to include themselves. And that means open source hardware solutions. Be the solution.
Yeah, open source hardware solutions that you are presenting at this website. You're offering stories. You're meeting developers. You're interacting with engineers. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to put a highlight on that.
Yeah, and we're interacting with the next generation of engineers as they graduate from college. That's important. Then, you know, we're supporting small businesses in the end.
That was an amazing point that we maybe glossed over. That if we get to where your technology is widespread, your local guy that's like changing tires for their neighbor can actually just turn a wrench, put a new part on, and send you on your way. Like we go from months to days. We take out a layer of expense that is absurd. It's absurd, Tom. As a contractor, I want to reiterate the layer of expense that you're talking about, where I have to go interview you, decide whether your claims are correct, then go order the part through a government agency and hope that part gets certified and returned to me to install on your wheelchair is a level of impossibility. It adds so much money to what I would have to charge for that. It's absurd. It's obscene. So go ahead, keep going.
So we also remove a burden from social workers.
Mm-hmm.
What people fail to realize about the realm of social work is that it is a expensive degree to get. It is a low-paying job, and people do it because they care. But then they get in there, right? They have this job that they paid a lot of money to have, and that's all they're qualified for because that's what they're trained for, and they can't get out. And you know, they might be dealing with 20 people a day, and that means that they might be dealing with delivering denials 19 times a day.
Wow, what a depressing job that would be.
It's very depressing. In fact, social workers have a much higher job rollover rate. People who just exit it immediately because they're like, "This isn't helping."
I lasted 6 months, bro. I'm not proud of it, but it was not for me.
Right. Then you have the situation where it actually causes depression and psychological issues.
I'm getting depressed just listening to it, to be honest with you. Go ahead.
We have a higher rate of suicide among social workers than the rest of the population. We have a higher rate of depression, psychosis, medication among social workers. And that's because their job is shit.
Right.
I mean, you have to think of it in this term, right? A social worker's job, as you know, is to reach out to the people that they're serving, get to know them as human beings, file paperwork for approval for assistance,
then get denied.
And then it's their job to go back to this person that they know, that they care about, and say, I'm not allowed to help you, when their entire job is to help.
I've got to say that is why I could see the writing on the wall that what I was doing was on some level futile. All right. That's why. And look, again, you know, I know that I had some limited positive impact, that I know there's good people in this system that are having impact every day. But I'm going to tell you that, I'm not going to talk about that. Never mind. That it is a very challenging job. Go ahead.
I can tell you that in the realms of disability, it's so bad that after talking to me, 2 of my social workers in the last 5 years have exited social work to work for nonprofits.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they want to install solar panels, they can reach out to me directly.
Well, they still care about their issues. They go to nonprofits that address those issues. And they're happier for it.
Yeah.
They do productive work in a nonprofit. They do not do productive work in a government system.
Yeah. Guys, my mom, this is just to give a little bit more history and why. One more reason why I'm so drawn to what Queter is doing. My mom worked for a nonprofit, locally funded charity for decades. And what I managed to do for her was start a golf tournament that raised many thousands of dollars. Probably, Tom, we're up to like $500,000-$600,000 that this golf tournament that I started 12 years ago has raised for her. She has since retired, but they do this golf tournament every year. They make bank off of it. It's an absolute blast. It raises awareness. If I can do something like that for you in the future, I am going to. But what I can do right now is go to that page that I have up on the screen and send the Mobility Independence Foundation a few dollars. And
computer off.
Tom.
Well, that was helpful.
I have a daily reminder to go to bed at 10 p.m. just so that I know that it's 10 p.m. because if I'm working, remember I just stated I put in 80 to 120 hours a week for this.
Right.
If I'm working at 10 p.m. and I don't know it's 10 p.m., the next thing I know it's 4 a.m.
I have had moments like that in my life. Plus I got bad news for you, Tom. As you get even older, you sleep even less. It's a kind of unenjoyable reality of life.
Yeah, I'm a 4 to 6 hour guy who's now struggling to get 4. So
yeah, I sometimes when I'm sleeping, I feel like I'm wasting time. So I just wake up and do something. It's kind of weird. Tom, I want to thank you for the time that you've taken tonight. I want to thank you for we played that game of being political pundits, that game of we can run for office and make impact. We realized that probably wasn't true. Okay, that is an illusion. But
I will say this, Tim. I want to say this. Expecting big changes to come legislatively is a mistake. Expecting big changes to be made through entrepreneurship, nonprofit benevolence, that's not a mistake. Expecting to sit on a panel of, I don't know, how many legislators do we have in New York now? 150?
Who cares? Because they do fucking nothing. But go ahead.
Right. You gotta get enough of those people to agree with you to fix it. And then you're not going to get all the fixes. You're going to get one little fix. If you can address any of the problems you have with what's going on in the real world tangibly with your own 2 hands and your own skills of networking with people who have skills, then you're going to do better in the world than if you run for office.
I absolutely agree with you. And even your watchdogging of your or offering aid and assistance where your skills align with what your local town board needs.
Yep.
Absolutely critically important. Guys, I want to remind everyone that I'm at Tim for Senate on X. A Free Solution is a real radio show that is growing right now. Kevin and I have weekly 1.5 to 2 hour broadcasts Wednesday nights. They go out live, or they go out Thursday nights at 8 o'clock on WYSL, WLC, WCKR, and WLEA. We're all over New York State. We're enjoying what we're doing. We're having fun. We get to bring you stories like what Thomas Daniel Queter is offering. And I think that those things are more important than arguing over the latest LPNH tweet or the latest LPNY tweet. Like, these things can have real impact for real people in your real communities. Asking $10 a month, $100 right now. All of these things have real impact on crafting solutions that, guys, I want to say it, that compete with a failing government system that is robbing people of their independence. All right. Like, as a libertarian, let's not kid ourselves. We're not anarchists. Things are not going to disappear overnight. the way to make the government better is what Thomas Daniel Queter is doing. Let's give him some support. And guys, I'm doing it. Like, I'm signing up. That's it.
Spike Cohen will tell you that you are the power, and I will tell you that you could be the solution.
I love it, brother. I love it. We are the solutions. Guys, check me out. We're going to miss a radio show next week. After that, we're going to be back Wednesday nights, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, something like that. Kevin and I cover local issues. We cover federal issues. We have a good time. We bring on great guests like Thomas Daniel Queter. Rich Bertel's been on. Sean Hannon's been on our show. Guys who have an axe to grind with the government. We're taking on authors. We're doing lots of fun stuff. Join us. Bring your checkbook tonight for Thomas Daniel Queter, guys. Thank you very much for joining us.
Be the solution.
Be the solution, brother. Thank you.